Through the chair, we're live on HCAM TV.
All right, thank you, Bob. Let me just see real quick how many board members we have. One, two, three.
I count six.
All right, well, we have enough, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. This is Gary Trendle. It is September 11th, 2023, 7 p.m. I hereby call our planning board meeting to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote meetings. In accordance with applicable law, this means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting via, sorry, just got a little Windows update here. Via virtual means, participants may access the meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of the members. Please respond with present if you are on the call. Rob Benson. Rob is not here. Jane.
Present.
Ron.
Present.
Elise. I think Elise said she had a personal conflict tonight. Matthew.
Present.
Michael. Michael's not here either. Vikaseeth.
Yes.
Navdeep.
Present.
All right. Well, we do have a very full agenda this evening, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna adjust the order a little bit just to help align some things, but we will start with our planning board appointments. And then we'll get into the hearings themselves. The Whisper-Way administrative pieces we'll save until we get to their point in the agenda. So after the planning board appointments, we have a handful of requests to continue that we can go ahead and vote on. Then we'll move forward with 87 Hayden Row, with the special permit for inclusionary zoning, and then Whisper-Way. So let's go ahead and start with the planning board appointments. To that section of the notes. John, I'm just going to ask you to remind us again. So we have 5 applicants, and 1 planning board representative for us to assign. Can you just quickly summarize the differences between the different positions that we have on the planning board?
For Zach or for Desiree?
Yes, sorry, for Zach. Yes.
For Zach, there are 2 open seats, and Zach also allows for 5 associate seats that are non-voting unless needed to make a quorum.
Okay.
Through the chair, I should also tell the board that Anna Dorsey withdrew her application for Zach today, and Daniel Eversole withdrew his application for Design Review Board today.
Okay. All right. So as far as Zach goes, that means that we have 4 candidates, of which we need to vote on our what are the 2 called? Sorry. Not the at-large, but the other ones, or those are the at-large members, and then we have, and then we'll have the option of placing the other 2 as alternates, which means they can attend, they can participate, but they cannot vote. And then the last piece is we need to designate somebody from the planning board as the representative on Zach. Did I get that right?
Yes, the associate members can vote if needed for a quorum, but otherwise are not voting.
Got it. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's do this. What we'll do is we're going to give each of the candidates a chance to give us a 30-second intro of their background and their interests. And given the length of our agenda tonight, I prefer to keep those pretty close to it. We will open it up if there is anyone has a common question for the applicants, and then we can go ahead and take a nomination for the at-large seats. So is Kristen on? Kristen Borzumato. Don't see her here. Mary. I see Mary here.
Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hello. I'm
Nice to
Mary
see you.
Clarkson Marlowe. It's nice to see you too.
Do you want us to give us a quick 30-second overview of your interests and qualifications?
Certainly. I've been in town for about a little over 20 years. I just finished up 5 years on the planning board, and I'm at 7 years on the ZAC, I think. So certainly something that I want to participate in going forward, but I can do that in a number of different ways. I also feel very strongly about new people getting onto the ZAC. So when I see all these applicants and there's 2 open at-large seats, I feel that I would like to apply for the associate position only and not be eligible for the voting positions, because a lot of times people who get the associate positions don't feel that they're important. I would attend all the meetings and obviously speak my mind, as I usually do. And I have no problem not having a vote. Okay?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Mary. Is Sam? Yes, I see Sam. Hi, Sam.
Hey, all. Okay, you don't know me like you know Mary, so I'll actually do a short intro, hopefully. So, hi, Sam Sater. I'm at 26 Kimmel Road. Moved here with my family in 2019. We have 2 kids attending Elmwood and Hopkins. Professionally, I'm a director of product management and software in healthcare. I guess personally, I've often found myself interested in things to do with developments, and for a number of reasons, I found myself looking through deeds and property records and bylaws and regulations. So I find myself in those circles, I guess, often. Most recently, I was involved in the all the tree cutting fund behind Springwoods, and that led me to kind of get in touch with OSPSC and even some Concom members, and was there for the fake residential proposal that was actually meant to be a solar farm from a couple of years ago, if you recall, in front of the planning board. So anyway, all this to say, more recently, I've really been interested in being an active participant instead of just a bystander. So I wanted to throw my hat in formally, and do, on the recommendation of a few folks, I ended up, and obviously given my interests, I ended up applying to ZAC, OSPSC, and Concom, and that's why I'm here. Happy to help.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Curtis.
Curtis Smithson. I'm at 2 Akins Road. I think I'm in my 2nd year of ZAC membership, or 1.5 or so. I think I came in partway through a term. Also on the Permanent Building Committee and the Design Review Board presently. I've been a consulting civil engineer for about 35 years. 90 to 95% of that time has been spent in land development in Oklahoma, Michigan, Connecticut, back in Chicago area, and then I've been here for, I think we're going on 6 years now. Really enjoy Hopkinton and like to help out. I've been on the so-called other side of the table. Being on the municipal side has been kind of interesting to see the other side of the coin.
All right. Thanks, Curtis.
Yep.
I appreciate all of you that have applied for this as well. As those of you that have been doing this for a while, you realize, and those that are new to it will soon realize, so much of the work in Hopkinton is done by volunteers. It's really, really important. And there's some pretty big needs by us as a community for engagement of this type. So appreciate everyone willing to volunteer in this capacity. I think I said I was going to open it up for questions, but I guess what I'm contemplating here is with Mary's request to be an associate member, and with both the other two applicants that are here, I'd be inclined to entertain a motion to appoint Sam and Curtis as the at-large members, and Mary and Kristen as associate members.
So moved.
Second.
Through the chair.
Right. Yes.
Was that Jane who made the motion?
Jane,
Yes.
yeah.
Just so you guys know, John is serving double duty tonight. He is supporting us, and he is also the minutes taker. So with Stephanie moving on to a new assignment and not backfilled him yet. So thank you, John. All right, well, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob, yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vikasith?
Yes.
And Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So, all right. So for our new members, you will need to get sworn in. So please make sure to stop by the town clerk's office, and you can go ahead and take care of the paperwork. And stay tuned. John, when is the next ZAC meeting?
Next Monday, talking about MBTA communities.
All right, it's a big one. All right, the second order for us with regards to planning board is for the planning board to appoint one of our members to serve as the representative of ZAC. And this is a pretty important role. Not only does it help ZAC in terms of helping them keep tabs of what's happening in the planning board, but this is also a reporting mechanism. So that this person can keep the planning board abreast of what's happening in ZAC. And I guess I'll just ask of the planning board members, are there any volunteers for this assignment?
Gary, Vic here. So just before somebody can nominate, or I would be interested to join, but I just want to understand a little bit more how is this role going to play out between these two teams? If a little more information would be helpful.
Yeah. So ZAC is a subcommittee of the planning board. Mm-hmm. It's the reason that we actually manage the nomination process. ZAC is responsible for recommending any bylaw changes that we have, and planning board, our portion of a big part of our role is assessing whether a proposal or application conforms to our bylaws, but those bylaws have to be maintained and updated and refreshed. And that's ZAC's job to do that. So at town meeting, most of the things that the planning board moves forward start in ZAC. They've got a number of they'll do some combination. Sometimes there's some bigger things, like, for example, the new solar bylaw that was a commercial solar bylaw that was passed a couple of years ago that has not been tested yet, but the real work of putting that together and fleshing it out and putting together a bylaw that we could get behind, that was all done in ZAC. So it is it's a working group that puts forward recommendations, puts them forward to the planning board. The planning board will then debate and recommend them, and then the planning board has the responsibility to take those to town meeting to evaluate or to advocate and take a vote on whether those become part of our bylaws.
Thank you.
Zoning advisory committee tends to be a little bit more, well, it used to be more seasonal. We tried to move away from that, just given that some of the things that they want to go after are big projects that take more time, and if we wait too long, then we don't do them. So, but it's also it's a different type of structure and engagement than what we have on the planning board.
Thanks, Gary. That's helpful.
So I'll go back to my question. Do we have any volunteers? Vic, are you interested?
Yeah, I can pick it up if nobody else then.
All right. Thank you. And if we don't have anybody else, oh,
I second his nomination or self-nomination.
All right, who is the motion from?
I move to appoint Vic as liaison to the Zoning Advisory Committee.
I'll second that motion.
All right.
Does Vic know the time commitment here? The frequency of the meeting?
I was about that was my second question before I could ask, but yeah, thanks for asking, Rob. Yeah. So
it's just like the planning board. It meets every 2 weeks, right? And the meetings are basically just as long. So it's a similar amount of preparation. It's really a similar time commitment. And from what I know of the process, Mary may be able to chime in more, being on both, but that's my knowledge of it.
More recently, we have been going down to a little less frequently. So every 2 weeks to a month is probably what is done. And there is some work to be done outside because, the committee members are the ones who really do the legwork. And so that is true. But I would say it's not as much workload as planning board is.
Thanks, Mary. So do we have site visits and everything as planning board has?
No, not site visits. No, it's all work in the group.
In the group.
So Vic, there's no site specific work that's being done. It is only a function of, and it's really so many ways a self-governed group that it's up to ZAC as to what they want to go after and propose as far as either new bylaws or amendments to existing bylaws.
Perfect. Thanks. Got it, Gary. And is that in person or maybe I'm trying to ask a little more, or is it in-person meetings, which when you meet, or Zoom?
We've been doing Zoom. Is that still going to continue, John?
It's up to the board, but yeah, I haven't received anybody saying, let's stop doing Zoom.
Perfect. For what it's worth, Zoning Advisory Committee is a fairly common place for people to start. I can tell you that a number of us on the planning board were members of the Zoning Advisory Committee before we became members of the planning board, myself included. So it's actually a really good place to learn, and it's like I said, it's more of a working group than a means of hearings and governance like the planning board is. The reality is that they do more of the planning. I mean, I don't mean to underclub what the planning board does, but it's an important part of ZAC as a subcommittee of the planning board.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. I'm in.
All right. So we have a nomination. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Navdeep,
Yes.
and Gary is a yes as well. So thank you, Vic. Appreciate you volunteering for that. And I think there's a lot of really good facets to being on Zach as well that I think you'll appreciate. All right, let's move forward to the design review board. And John, I'm just gonna, I know you're doing two jobs. Actually, I can do this. So the design review board, we have different seats that have different requirements. So this one's a little bit more complex. This is intended to ensure a mix of skills within the design review board. So seat one is the designee of the chair of the planning board. Seat two is one person doing someone qualified by training and experience in the fine art of landscape design. Seat three is one person doing business in the town as a citizen at large. Seat four is one member of the Historic District Commission or a designee of the planning board. And seat five is one person qualified by training and experience in the art of design professions. And then the design review board also has two alternate seats. So,
Chair.
Yes, John.
Just to remind everybody, Daniel Eversole has withdrawn his application.
Yes. So we have, and John, are all of the seats up for renomination?
Yes, design review board only operates on 1-year terms.
Okay. So we've got 4 people for 5 seats.
Correct.
So all we really need to do is assign them to the respective seats, and then we can go ahead and entertain a motion and vote on that motion. Does that make sense? All right. So as I look at this, I see Jeff Doherty on. Thanks, Jeff, for joining us. And can I make the assumption that Jeff would be our seat 2, who is qualified in training and experience in landscape design?
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, so I've been in town for over 60 years. I am a business owner. I am a Massachusetts certified horticulturist. I've served on CPC, OSPC, and have been on design review board for about, I'm not sure how long, I want to say it's about 15 years. And happy to serve in that role, advising on our landscape plans that come before the board.
Thanks, Jeff. And I will say, just so people realize, what I'm trying to do here is kind of just work through names for the more specific requirements first, because some of the other ones we have a bit more flexibility. So that's the rationale here. But thank you, Jeff, again for signing up and volunteering, and you've all a consummate champion for Hopkinton, so we appreciate that. Curtis, we know your background. We also appreciate your engagement. Of the seats, which one are you most qualified for? And you're not on the Historic District Commission, are you?
No, not.
Okay. So then you would be either doing business in town or citizen at large, or appointee of the planning board chair. All right, let's get back to you in a second. Jeanette is another longstanding member of the design review board. She is a resident architect, so I think she is going to serve in seat 5. And then Sue Ellen. Hi, Sue Ellen.
Sorry, have you muted? How are
That's
you?
okay. Good. How are you?
Good.
Um,
On the design review board since its conception as well as Jeanette.
all
And
right.
Jeff.
Do you have a preference of? No, you're not on the Historic District Commission, are you?
No, I thought Jeanette was, but I'm not sure if she still is.
Okay. Or let me ask you this: do you meet any of the other specific seat requirements?
I am an interior designer with an interior design firm in Hopkinton for 30 years. I have a master's degree from Harvard in design, and I am also an adjunct professor at Rhode Island School of Design. And I am immediate past president of the National Association of Women in Construction Education Foundation.
Exceptional qualifications. Thank you. So I'm going to actually suggest then that you serve as seat 5 and that we shift Jeanette to seat 4 as a member of the Historic District Commission. And then that leaves us with
through the chair.
Yep.
Not that it really makes a difference. Jeanette, I just looked on the roster, is not a member of the Historic District Commission, so she can still be a designee of the planning board.
All right. Well, either way. Okay. Thank you. And then on that, I'm going to suggest that with Curtis, maybe Curtis, we put you as seat 3, and then that leaves us 1 seat for a designation for me in the future. So
I haven't technically done a whole lot of business in Hopkinton, so I may want to be the designee.
But you can be the citizen at large.
Citizen at large. That's I am citizen. I am large. So.
Is that any objections to that? Does that make sense?
Works for me.
All right. So then I will entertain a motion to appoint Jeff Doherty to seat 2, Curtis Smithson to seat 3, Jeanette Thompson to seat 4, and Sue Ellen Stoddard to seat 5.
So moved. Ron Draper.
Second.
And assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Ron Draper, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So it's funny. So you talk about the various boards in town. Design Review Board is probably one of that has some of our most qualified members. I will just say, and we can talk about this at a future date, but and maybe this relates to Zach as well. But I would love to find a way to give some additional teeth to Design Review Board because I think it is an exceptionally well qualified board. I think it's something that's really important to our town. So we're not going to talk about that now, but maybe that's something that we can discuss at a later point in time as to how we can strengthen their recommendations. Okay, so moving forward in our agenda, we do have a few meetings to continue, excuse me, a few hearings to continue. And these, just looking to see if they're going to have different dates on decisions. Let's just do each of them one at a time. So on Lumber Street, 28 Lumber Street, they've requested to continue to November 6th. John, do we need to continue the decision on that as well?
No.
No. Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for 28 Lumber Street to November 6th, 2023.
So moved.
Second, Matthew Franco.
All right. So no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Navdeep,
Yes.
and Gary is a yes as well. 188 and 190 Fruit Street, stormwater management permit. They've got some potential changes coming to their proposal for both the stormwater management permit and the earth removal permit. So I think we can vote on these together. John, do either of these need a extension of the decision date?
The stormwater management permit does. I do not believe the earth removal permit does. Let me check.
All right, while you're checking.
The earth removal permit does not.
Okay. Think we can vote on these at once? Do you think it's better to keep it separate?
For me doing the minutes, separate, but if you want to do it together, that's fine.
Nope, we'll do it separate. So I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for 188 and 190 Fruit Street Stormwater Management Plan to October 2nd, 2023, and to continue the decision date to October 11th, 2023.
So moved, Ron Prefer.
Second, Matthew Vronka.
Assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes. Motion carries.
Chair,
Yes.
quick question. Sorry, this is my fault. Did you include a decision deadline to October 29th for the stormwater management permit?
No, October 11th.
Okay.
The meeting was continued to October 2nd, so I went a week and a half past
That's
it.
fine.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. Would you like more time for the decision?
Nope, that's fine.
No? Okay. All right, and then I will entertain a motion to continue the earth removal permit for 188 and 190 Fruit Street to October 2nd, 2023.
So moved, Ron Prefer.
Second, Matthew Vronka.
All right, assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well, so that motion carries.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Did we vote on the minutes yet?
No.
Okay.
Nope, I was gonna save those for the end.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Nope, that's okay. All right, moving on to 87 Hayden Row. Just looking to see who's on here. I see Ken. Ken, remind me again, who else is representing you on this proposal?
It should be Dave Marquardt, Scott Richardson.
Yes, thank you. Lots of names here. I don't see Scott, but I do see Dave.
I'm here.
Oh,
There's Scott.
Yeah,
Hey,
Dave and
Scott.
I. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. It didn't. That's really funny. Your name doesn't show up on my participant list on the right. All right. Well, why don't you guys let's start with giving us a quick update as to what has progressed since the last meeting on the 21st of August.
Dave, do you want to start relative to the stormwater components and everything site related?
Sure, this is Dave. Just kind of confirming some of the changes that were made from prior. Kind of working sort of down the line with Weston and Sampson's second memorandum.
We did confirm the number of trees that were to be cut at the beginning, the front of the site and to the right. We have added and confirmed some soils that needed to be, if we had surplus soils, how we were going to handle the surplus soils. A note has been added to the plan to that effect. Weston and Sampson required more clarification of the screening around the proposed dumpsters with concrete pads, chain link fence with mesh at both dumpster locations. All the utilities are underground and are shown accordingly on the plans. All the buildings do conform to zoning. Phase 2 building is a service building, and it is a 2,000 square foot building. We have located the existing crosswalk on Hayden Row Street. We've agreed to restripe that prior to occupancy on the front building. There was a note on the construction stabilization pad that was about in the middle of the proposed driveway, a couple hundred feet off of Hayden Row Street. That's been moved to the front. We've also indicated some stone bales, stone dikes, additional erosion control measures, and a temporary sedimentation basin uphill of the proposed detention. We've indicated once again that the existing driveway curb cut for existing 87 will be removed and restored to a full depth of the neighboring and abutting sidewalk. Lighting, we have remained at our 6 lights. Scott has updated the plan. The maximum height has been indicated in one of his notes. The shield is on the back and pointing down. And all our lighting is contained to our site. Emergency access with fire has been discussed prior to the submission. That has been reviewed and approved. EV cars, we spoke last. We're required to have 5 spaces. We've indicated where the pedestals will be, and we have labeled those as spaces 34 through 38. Mark, are you present? Mark Pamarini, are you present? Mark has done the drainage for us and was supposed to be in attendance to sort of explain. Maybe we could give him a couple minutes, but we've essentially have done some additional testing right after our last meeting to confirm some soils in the back. Weston and Sampson's has asked us to resize the 2 underground drain systems at building number 1, the front 87 and 87R in the back. Those have been adjusted. The system's got a little bit larger. We did have a Zoom call at Friday with John at 11 o'clock. We've made some adjustments on our drainage. And I think, I don't know if Darren's on the call, but I think we've made great strides satisfactory in making the corrections that Sampson had required.
Yeah. So Dave, here's my thoughts, and I do see Darren is on as well. I wonder what might make most sense is to go through the most recent memo from Weston and Sampson, and I appreciate the color coding because it makes it pretty easy to scan. But maybe what we do is we go through the items that still have orange comments, because those are things that either either you guys have addressed and come to terms since the 7th, when that memo was posted, or are there things that we still need to discuss? So I think that's one of the things I'd like to work through. And then the second thing, I know I was not at the last hearing, but watching the video, I just want to make sure that we all understand the stormwater component to this. So those are kind of the two primary areas that I want to make sure we get through here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And maybe Darren, it might make more sense just for you as our peer review engineer to lead this part of the discussion, because I'd just like to hear from you as to what remaining open items we should be discussing from your review of the project.
Sure. No, and I'm happy to go through those. I actually have the memo up, and I don't know if it would be helpful. I can just share the actual text. I mean, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I think the color coding does highlight.
Yeah, you should be able. John can enable you to share your screen.
Okay.
John is filling multiple duties here, so.
Yes.
There we go.
There we go. And as Dave was mentioning, we did meet on Friday, so this memo is a bit outdated at this point, but we can go through items. So, we followed.
And Darren, just to keep efficient, let's just focus on the stuff that that you don't feel is resolved, and then we can circle back and see if people have other questions about other components of it. But I'd rather focus on the orange stuff.
Yeah. So all these green items were from our initial review. No further action was needed. And then based on the August 29th submission of revised plans, we did have like these orange items. So one of them, I guess the first is the mechanical equipment screening. The applicant has noted that they're going to be providing some additional details on what that looks like. So we haven't actually reviewed that yet. So we just recommend reviewing that. And it could be a condition if the planning board would prefer, but that is something that we have not. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, we did through the chair, we did submit some renderings today that indicate that all condensers will be basically mounted on a recessed roof area. So there will be nothing mounted on grade. We'll be scalloping out a part of the gabled roof, which again will not be visible. The equipment will not be visible from grade. So John does have those drawings, and he could forward them over to you, Darren.
Okay, yeah, and that was our comment, was just to look at those. If those have been issued today, we would just recommend reviewing. The dumpster screening, as David mentioned, has been addressed in the plan, so that was taken care of. On the stormwater items, we had a pretty in-depth discussion. So some of the discrepancies, which they're still like just minor discrepancies that would need to be addressed, they're fractions of a foot, so nothing significant for this first comment on standard 2. We also had discussions on the second comment that we had about some invert elevations from the stormwater plans, that we were satisfied with the responses. Again, just any changes, and we did receive additional stormwater study documentation on Friday after our call that we've looked through. So this is reflecting kind of before those calls. Let's go down, and then the soil textural analysis was pretty significant. And we had a good discussion on Friday with the applicant and their consultants at the test pit data. We got clarification on what some of the acronyms were, and it was conservative in the assessment of the recharge of the stormwater system. And that actually comes up in many of our orange comments. So this has been addressed, and is not an issue. So, and then the soil logs that are on the plans There were some soil types that were not called out, but we did get the definitions of some of the acronyms, the SL being the sandy loam, LS being the loamy sand. So that covered, all these comments are tied to the test pit information. Similarly, this is also tied to the test pits, which we got clarification. So standard 3 was addressed. And then standard 4, which is just the sizing of the storm scepter unit as discussed, as David flagged. We were given revised plans showing the larger units that we recommended. So that comment has been addressed. So that standard 4 has been addressed. We did receive this map for standard 6 of just the wetland areas, critical areas. So just as confirmation, that was addressed. So standard 6 has been completed. This was like a minor comment that was also addressed. Standard 7 is just that this is a redevelopment. The project was evaluated as a new development. So because we have compliance with the other standards, we have achieved satisfaction on this comment. There's no further action needed on standard 7. And that's all the stormwater items. So I think there were some revisions, and I guess there is going to be separately, and we can discuss the timing of this, but there will be a stormwater management permit application from the applicant for the same site. So, some of these may dovetail into that review as well. But then just to continue, the last 3 orange items were the lighting plan, which the applicant had noted they're making revisions, and we would just need to see that photometric layout plan. We just recommend reviewing just for the limited light spillage on the northern edge. Some of the changes that they had planned for some of the pole heights, which I think it was more the elimination of a building mounted light is going to be reflected on the plans.
Through the chair, could I just clarify that? We have submitted a revised photometric plan, and then that one light that is in reference that it's 21 foot high is actually illuminating the second floor deck. There's actually an exterior deck off the second floor. So basically it's going to be mounted about 9 feet above that deck to provide lighting for that deck. So yes, it is 21 feet above grade, but it basically is providing lighting for an exterior deck on the second floor, which I don't think should present a problem. But that is also reflected in the photometrics. And again, all the lighting is on, staying within our site.
Okay, and that was issued today?
Just today, yes.
Okay, yeah, okay, no, so we'll just recommend reviewing the limited lighting changes. And then the last comment was tied to just constructability, and it's a new comment. It's just the water pressure in this area, and the applicant did confirm they've already reached out. And Ken had mentioned, or Dave had mentioned, which department specifically you've been talking with, if it was the water department or fire department, just for the fire suppression system, because the pressure may be too low. I believe the applicant is going to be reaching out and getting a stamp plan, potentially needing to add booster pumps just to make sure the fire suppression system is meeting building codes. So we had just flagged that, and I think that's a separate review, not part of the planning board review. We just flagged it as a constructability question, something the applicant should be considering, which they are and are pursuing separately through, and I can't recall if it was the water department directly or fire.
Yeah, again, this would be part of the building permit application that flow tests would be performed, and then the fire prevention system would be designed accordingly.
Okay. So else? Oh, go ahead.
So Darren, what I'm hearing is that almost all of these you were able to close out on Friday. The exceptions would be the lighting changes that just came through today. And And I think there was one more, but I didn't write it down fast enough.
Just the roof-based mechanical equipment,
screening.
just to look through that too. Yeah, no, the applicant had addressed the vast majority of our comments, and then the follow-up meeting on Friday was very productive.
Great. Okay. So let's take a moment here, and I'll open up to the planning board first to see if members of the board have questions or discussion on the peer review piece of this project.
So the chair, Vic here.
Yeah, go ahead, Vic.
Darren, just a quick, could you please refresh us on the stormwater part of it, which you are saying discrepancies?
Sure. Yeah, our site civil engineers have just reviewed. So there's a stormwater study the applicant had prepared and actually revised and resubmitted. So there's just a few areas where there's like hundreds of foot discrepancies in some of that invert elevations. I think the applicant has addressed even the bulk of those. So that's really what we were seeing. And then there was some of the test pit. A lot of the comments were tied to the soil, which is critical and important for the stormwater system and, you know, infiltration of the water that's going to be under the parking lot, and the system, you know, having proper functioning is understanding the soil types of the test pit nomenclature has also been, we were looking for that to be clarified, and it was, you know, some of the acronyms were not defined and have now been defined.
Was one discussion which came in one of the previous PB meeting when we have this one, right? The excess water flow would be standard. And there was something which a concern was coming up. If it's standard like that, there's a chance of mosquitoes or something can start piling up as part of it. And there was some discussion which was also said that, you know, we'll look into that. I'm just picking up that one particular piece because I just want, the student was very concerned about it also.
Yeah. So let me ask it a little bit different way. And I think one thing that might be helpful here is to walk through what happens to the stormwater now. And then with the engineered stormwater management system, what happens to the stormwater after this site is, you know, assuming this moves forward, what happens to the stormwater afterward? Because I think there's been some discussion and potentially a little confusion in prior meetings and even on the sidewalk, and I want to use this time to get everyone aligned on those two things. How is stormwater managed now, and how will it be managed if this project moves forward?
This is Mark Pimarini with the civil engineer on the project. Yeah, the water now flows toward the east, down between a couple homes down to Hazel Road. So the flow is still going to remain the same, but now with the basin, we're actually going to be reducing the rate and the volume of runoff that heads in that direction.
So let me just take a step back there. So water runs down towards Hazel Road. Some of that, I assume, is going to get absorbed into the ground. On a heavy storm, it's going to just run, you know, on top of the surface. It looks like there's been some sort of ad hoc efforts to mitigate some of that with either kind of some trenching, and there's some grasses and that sort of thing now. But you know, just in terms of what happens now. Anything else I'm missing there? But that's kind of my interpretation of it. And I mean, how are the soils down there? Is this like, do we have any sense as to how much of the water is currently being absorbed versus how much of it is running off the top? Or
the existing site is very compact. You know, where all the area that's been disturbed from the past, it's very compact soil. So in that area, it's not absorbing. It's probably running right off. Whereas down back where we did the testing for the basin and stuff, like we found some better soils. So that's why the basin's down toward that east end.
Okay. So moving forward, let's just follow the water. It lands on the parking lot. It lands on the roof. where does it, just walk us through that. Where does it go?
It has actually there's multiple systems. There's one subsurface system for the front building that takes the roof runoff from the front building. Then the second system, which is closer to that second building in the back, that one will take actually some parking area and the roof for the second building. And then the rest of the drainage would go down toward the detention basin, into the detention basin, be detained, and then it outflows out to the rear there, to the east.
So in plain speak, that water is going to be transported via pipe through a drain into that retention basin. And in that retention basin, it's going to, most of it will be absorbed into the ground. But then if it's such a large storm system that it fills up, then there's some overflow capacity, at which point the overflow capacity would go where?
To the east, the same direction that it goes now.
Okay. And that retention basin is designed as such that how frequently do you anticipate that would overfill?
I mean, due to the soils on the upper end of the site, I mean, we're trying to recharge as much as we can with those first two systems, but during, I can't tell you what size storm, but it will have some outflow. But again, on every storm, 2, 10, all the different storms, we're reducing what was going there before in both rate and volume.
Okay. And sorry, I want to take a step back. So you mentioned the upstream systems. Are there additional points for absorption before it gets to the retention basin? Okay.
Correct.
That's why I was trying to trace like a drop of water. Where does it go?
Yeah.
So
those upper two, just so you know, I just want to preface this, those upper two systems, we're going to try and recharge as much as possible. The soil there isn't the best soil. The better soil's down in the basin, the open basin.
So just for members of the public, those first two components of those are underground holding tanks, basically with holes in them that allow the water to accumulate and then absorb into the ground.
Correct.
And that's water that in its current state is either going to run across the top, or some of it could get absorbed into the ground.
Correct.
And then anything beyond that doesn't get absorbed in those first two systems, the sort of the belts and suspenders, is the retention basin at the end, so that anything that makes it that far then gets held in that.
Correct.
And there's better absorption there, so you expect that to work better than the first two.
A little better. Correct. Yeah.
A little bit better.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Okay.
And Mark, isn't there also an overflow from that last detention basin that is also on Ken's property?
Correct. There is we made that small depression overflow area for water to again be held up before it gets out to the east there.
Okay. Where does it go if it goes in that overflow?
It's going to end up going into the overflow and then going out toward the east. So the overflow is about a foot deep. It's just another area to hold it for a little bit, infiltrate whatever it can, then overflow to the east.
Okay.
It's we designed it now. That was a comment that Weston and Sampson had. We designed it now so it's a lower, below the outlet elevation, so there's not going to be no backup in water or anything like that. We'll just hold it for a little bit and let it go.
Yeah, and again, I'm just trying to explain this so that members of the public understand. The folks that those of us that aren't engineers, that we can understand kind of at a high level how the system works. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is that it should be a improvement over what's there now. And hard for me to say how much of an improvement it is. That's where I'd love to get either from you or maybe even from our peer review engineer as to what they see as an improvement. But there is still in a major stormwater event, there's still some risk that some water flows downhill. So there could still be some water, but what I'm hearing is it would be substantially less than what happens now.
Yes.
So maybe Darren, Darren, would you be willing to comment? And I guess I just, as the town representative engineer, I'd love to get your perspective on the improvements that this stormwater system offers over what's there today.
Yeah, so there will be two fairly substantial underground infiltration galleries. We had so yeah, those will, there's a lot of current impervious pavement and compacted soils in the existing conditions. Those are, there'll be a parking lot, so that'll remain the case with pavement, with some landscaped areas, but there will be subsurface stormwater storage that is tied all to the east to the detention basin and then overland flow. I guess we haven't looked at the claim, I guess, because it's not necessarily part of the peer review of this overall reduction. It's not a requirement or goal. They're just meeting the current code of what the stormwater requirements are. So they do have a system that will retain water to a volume that's an improvement than the overland flow that's currently there, because there's all these new systems going in. Once those are at capacity, the same amount of water is going to be flowing off site that would flow off before the system was installed, because once the capacity is achieved, you have no more surplus capacity. So in a storm event, you could have the same amount of flow leaving the site after the system is like overwhelmed with whatever rain or snow melt is coming. So I think it's a little tough to say it's going to be it is going to improve. There's a peak to the storm event, so it's going to moderate that peak down. But any storm is going to eventually, or a larger storm could still overwhelm the system, just like the current conditions would overwhelm, the system. Well, there's no system now, but it's just that, there's a peak to the capacity that won't be mitigated. And that's that's standard. I mean, no system is going to, store all the water that lands on this parcel for the duration of the storm event. That's not what the objective is of these systems. It's to mitigate the water and manage it properly and try to infiltrate as much as possible, but there are limits to those controls.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at here, what I'm trying to assess is, with residents being downhill from this site, I want to make sure that they are not adversely affected by this project. And we've heard concerns from them, whether it be about water flow or about standing water and mosquitoes and bugs and whatnot. I like to think that holistically, any stormwater management system is going to serve better than what's there now, because right now there is no stormwater management system and there's a lot of previously disturbed soil. But I guess I'm not feeling terribly comfortable, because I keep hearing a lot of comments that, well, it's still going to reach capacity, it's still going to overflow, there's still going to be water coming down, and it just inherently makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So
Sure, yeah, and there's really, if you're on a slope in a storm event, there's really, you're not going to stop the water from going downhill. It's going to eventually go downhill, and no system is designed to maintain all the water on the site, especially on a smaller, highly paved surface. So I don't think that's the goal of the design, is to retain all water on the parcel, but I think there will be an improvement on, most storm events will be better managed in the current system. The mosquitoes question, which was raised last time, I think the applicant had indicated they were confident that the detention basin would be not full of standing water and would drain sufficiently on that eastern portion of the site. And we have additional test pit data now to provide some better classification of the soil types to support that determination. I don't know if I'm answering the question, though. I know it's an overall kind of comfort level of the system.
Yeah, I mean, let me open up to the board and see how they feel about it. Any comments, thoughts, either on the peer review or the stormwater component to it?
Through the chair. Again, this is we can never compete against gravity, okay? And gravity will forces water to run downhill. So how much can we actually mitigate, and at what situations are we looking for? So the storm of the century comes, no stormwater management system that was designed any time in the last 10 years will be able to handle it. So what is the acceptable level? Because we have to ensure that the residents are not left holding the bag, shall we say. But again, there has to be some common sense in this decision process. So it's like, where is this and how far from the norm are we looking at? So those are just my thoughts listening to the conversation.
And again, I guess, Darren, this is where I'm looking for your professional opinion. Does this meet current standards? Are there any reasonable ways that it could be further strengthened? And I realize that there's not an obligation to go beyond current standards, but none of us on the planning board are stormwater experts. So that's where we want to lean on you to help guide us through this process.
Sure, and I mean the space constraints. I mean, we've designed there's best management practices in that stormwater manual of rain gardens and other features, and the more landscaping you have, the better to minimize impervious areas. But obviously with the parking lot, the applicant has included a fair number of landscaped areas, so that'll help absorb some water. All these subsurface structures will also take on some of that stormwater capacity, slow the flow to the east.
In your professional opinion, is this a well-designed system?
It's for a parking lot, then it meets the standards of the stormwater manual. So, the comments we had were addressed. And we haven't gone to the next level of trying to design what we would have come up with. We would typically just review and we would make suggestions if we saw anything else. But space wise, there's also just not enough room really for any. I think they've added where they can the stormwater control features. There's certainly others that they could consider. There's dozens of or half dozen best management practices for stormwater, tree boxes, as I mentioned, rain gardens. There's lots of other features that they just take up a fair amount of room because of the landscaping part of them, that they're filtering water, holding water. Those sometimes, rain gardens, can have also mosquito issues if they're not properly maintained. So the more features you add, sometimes you have, more maintenance issues and more, other effects from them. But on the whole, the system, is what we would expect to have seen. It lines up with the standards and follows the Massachusetts Stormwater Manual.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, I saw you had your hand raised for a minute there and I jumped in on top of it, but did you have a
No, I had nothing else to add beyond. I guess the one thing I was going to ask specifically for the feedback on was confirming, I guess, the drainage with the mosquito concern, but otherwise, nothing else to add.
We discussed that last. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just had a quick question. So through the chair, is there a scenario with the system as designed where it would ever perform worse than, essentially what's there now? I mean, I think that's the biggest question, right?
No, I mean, the system's designed per the regulations for up to 100-year storm event. And we use the NOAA 14 intensities according to your regulations, which is like an 8.5-inch rainfall in 12 hours, 24 hours. Sorry.
So, but I think Michael's question is a good one. Is there any circumstance where the way it's designed would perform worse than what's there today?
That's not designed to be worse. It'll be better.
Right.
Yeah.
So better or the same. Okay.
Yeah. Just to reinforce that too, there's no system there now.
Exactly. That's the point I was
So
Scott,
basically,
that's exactly what we're trying to.
Yeah. So any rain that comes down onto the site automatically flows to the east because that's the low part of the site. And so again, there are 2 underground retention systems, the StormTech systems. They then, if they fill, they flow to this detention area, which has actually gotten larger in the latest design scheme, I believe. And if that fills, there's then another overflow system that is behind Ken's current property. So you actually have 4 lines of defense versus 0 lines of defense, if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Other questions or comments from the board? And then on this peer review, we'll open it up and see if members of the public have any questions or comments. All right, seeing no other comments from the board. Anybody from the public?
Yeah, hi, it's Rhonda and Steve Petrovsky from 2 Hazel Road, the property to the east, where all the overflow is going. Couple of questions. I'm hearing some good things, but I'm also hearing some things that have not alleviated my concerns. I'm hearing the overall volume will be reduced, but will the current flow of the water change? My concern is you're now directing the water into a retention pond, much more concentrated. So maybe the neighboring properties see a reduction, but our property is adjacent. Are we going to see an increase in volume not overall, but the volume that would hit our property?
Which of our engineers want to answer that question?
No, it's been designed and it includes your property. It's designed so there's no increase in rate or volume. It's a decrease to all the properties to the east.
The other concern we have, should there be an increase, should 100-year storm events are happening every week now. Oh, here comes my cat. Excuse me. 100-year storm increases are happening much more frequently. Our leaching system is right behind there for our septic. What impact is that potentially going to have on our septic system? I mean, that's an expensive repair if it fails.
I mean, the flow is going to flow to where it was before. If I'm not mistaken, it goes between your property and number 4, 2 and 4.
Yeah, it goes between our property and Susan, the property on Eastview, but also some of the adjacent properties.
Okay. I mean, it's going to flow to where it flowed at the pass. It shouldn't flow to your backyard. It should flow toward where it flowed before.
It should, but what if it doesn't?
Well, I guess what I'm hearing though is that it's going to be, so even in that situation where there is, if there is an increase in 100-year storms, there's still going to be less water flowing beyond the stormwater management system than there is currently.
Even though they're basically taking, so currently it's just all stone and gravel, let's say. It dissipates all over the place. So there isn't really one area that it goes to, including the stuff, all the rainwater that's on the roof is just basically spreads across permeable surface. And now we're going to contain all of that, including the roof water, and put it in directly into a pipe that's going to take it down. I'm just having a time understanding how that doesn't increase the volume and pressure when you have a heavy rainstorm.
So I think maybe I can take a shot at that, because it's not just a pipe. It's actually and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but there's effectively an underground cistern in a sense that holds water. So it doesn't even move. So literally what happens is it goes into the first holding tank, and then it'll absorb as much as it can there, and that will fill up, and that will continue to drain. And then whatever that can't handle, it moves into the second tank. And that tank fills up, as it's draining while it goes. And then anything beyond that then goes to the retention basin. And those tanks are designed as such so that, if you get a really hard rainstorm right now, that water, there's no holding capacity. So all that water just runs right down. Even though it's dirt, very little of it gets absorbed. If it's a slow, steady rain, like a drizzle, then yes, more of that's going to get absorbed. But in a heavy rainstorm, all that is very quickly just going to flow right downhill. Whereas now there's some holding capacity, so that some percentage of that rain isn't even going to make it to that second or that third layer of protection.
I'm familiar with the underground chambers. I do property management, so I'm very familiar with that type of system that they're trying to install. But I guess, from my experiences, it basically works really well when it's in these chambers dump into a catch basin system. But I've never heard of anybody using the chambers to mitigate the outflow of water and have it effective when they're just running sort of what I call on the underground or in a contained pipe and trying to disperse it. So usually when you have this type of situation, most people add pumps inside those chambers to kind of push the water into sewer or catch basins.
Oh, these chambers are meant for stormwater to go in and recharge as much as possible.
Yeah, these are correct. Yeah, the stormwater that I'm dealing with, basically, it does get recharged into the river.
Gary, is a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Would it be helpful to share the site drawings that show this particular work, just to walk through that, or is that?
Yeah, I think I do think that's a good idea, and I guess maybe what would help too is some additional information about the size of each of these different holding tanks, because my understanding is that maybe that would help us better understand the role that those holding tanks play.
Sure, I can share my screen if I'm allowed, and kind of run through the general design of the system. And Mark, obviously, you can chime in as needed. But basically, this is the front building. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Front building, 12,000 square feet. This is the first under the parking lot retention area. These are the StormTech systems. And then that goes down a pipe down here. This is the second underground StormTech system, which again is for this parking area and this building. Again, this is for this whole parking lot, this building, to retain that, let me reduce this a minute, area. And then you have this piping here that then all this connects to and comes down to the rear of the property, which then has this retention area, which has actually got larger than the last design scheme. So it's quite large. And then there's this subsequent overflow basin that is here. So again, we have 4 systems that work in concert to maintain, control, and mitigate any runoff that's going to the east. That's my quick overview, simplified.
Yeah. So, Scott, do you have a volume of those storm tech systems?
Yeah, again, that would all be in the stormwater report that Mark has done, and that's been reviewed by Darren and his team to basically suggest that it's all in compliance with the stormwater management requirements for this particular site and the expected rain events that would occur. Is that, and again, Mark can talk more about what those volumes are than I can.
Yeah, I just wanted to give to folks some, ballpark size of how much holding capacity they have.
I can tell you, just give me 1 second, I'm bringing it up. Okay, storage system, the first one, which is up front near that first building, that one can hold up to, I'm in cubic feet here, so 1,694 cubic feet. And then system 2 can handle up to, system 2 can handle up to, yes, I can get to where I need to be. That one's up to 1,000 cubic feet. So they both can handle quite a lot of flow.
2,600 cubic feet.
Just in those 2 systems, yeah.
And how many gallons in a cubic foot?
7.48, yeah. 7.48, yeah.
Okay. 2,700 times 7.48. 20,000 roughly gallons, 20,000 gallons.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And then, so I guess that's, so again, if those fill, again, we have this retention area. And again, I don't know what the grade differential here is, Mark. It looks like about 5 feet.
Yeah, correct, to the top, yeah.
Yeah, so I assume, again, the capacity of this basin has been calculated in your reports?
Yeah, I can give you that too. Again, that one will have some flow out of it because of the piping, but it will hold, in 100 year storm, it will hold the volume. So let's see. Let's pull it up.
Kind of unrelated to our property concerns, if there's going to be 5 feet of water in there, how are you going to make sure public safety, children walk through there to go to school?
Well, it drains out. It's not going to be sitting in there. Only the bottom foot or so is a sump, and we have to drain that out. It has to drain out within 72 hours, and that's why we needed the soil types in order to calculate that.
So those are fairly standard features that we have all over town.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, up to the just so you know, up to the spillway, I think it's 522.5. So up to the spillway, the overflow spillway, it can hold up to 13,700 cubic feet in that basin.
Can I ask a question? In some cases, we have fences around those retention basins. Is there a fence around this one at all?
I don't see one.
No, we don't have one shown. No.
No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
Okay. Is there any? And I honestly don't know when a fence is warranted and when it's not. But to the comment about safety or people playing in them or whatever else, I know there's also a maintenance component to these. and maybe I'll look to Darren again as the town representative here. I'm curious, in your professional opinion, if there should be a fence of some kind around this.
Yeah, they are very common features, these detention basins, and because they do drain, I believe within, is it 72 hours, Mark?
Yeah.
That they're typically not fenced. I mean, they could have a few feet of water per 24, 48 hours. But yeah, these are, they're very common on like the highway interchanges. You'll see them, these detention basins, so they're not fenced. Obviously, this is a residential area. I don't believe there's a requirement to, because it's not a surface water. Even if it was a surface water feature, it wouldn't be fenced necessarily. So.
Yeah, I guess some of it depends on depth and side slope and other factors there. But if you're comfortable with it not being fenced, then that makes me comfortable with it.
Just so you're aware, all of the children east of our property go through that area to get to the schools on Hayden Road. So you just need to be aware. I mean, I don't want to see something happen to anyone.
Sure. Yeah. Again,
I'll check too. Yeah, if it would require fencing, but I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's no fencing at the property line, and this is isn't this the backyard of your property?
Yeah, that's our property.
Children walking through private property, like they just cut through.
Yeah, through the chair.
They're on Hayden Road.
Through the chair.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let's try to minimize the back and forth discussion, but Ken, I'll recognize you if you want to go ahead and make a comment there.
I'm being the owner of 89 and 87. There's always been concern about children cutting through the property. It is private property. And if the neighbors want me to put up a fence, to aesthetically stop children from cutting through the property, it is private property. We've allowed it only because it's a convenience to the neighborhood. I didn't know if that's the point of this, but I just want to comment on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. All right, are there any other further questions with regards to the engineering review? I think we've beat up the stormwater piece pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward then. If we go to our public hearing outline, I want to just remind folks of the decision criteria. This is for the planning board so that they know what we are evaluating against. The site plan shall be designed to conform to the site plan standards as set forth in section 210-136.1 and listed below. A, site disturbance in wetland buffer zones and to slopes in excess of 25% shall be minimized. B, unique natural and historic features shall be preserved whenever feasible, and the use of section 210-117.2 lots with historic structure shall be considered as a mechanism to do so where appropriate. C, tree vegetation and soil removal shall be minimized. D, the site activities shown in the site plan shall be screened from view from abutting properties and residential use. Methods of screening may include solid fencing, landscaping, or other proposals of the applicant, subject to review by the planning board. Such screening may be located on or off-site. If located off-site, written permission of the off-site property owner shall be provided to the board. E, all utilities shall be underground. F, exposed storage areas, machinery, service areas, truck loading areas, utility buildings, and structures and other similar uses shall be visually screened from abutting properties and those using public ways. Screening methods may consist of solid fencing, landscaping, or similar proposals submitted by the applicant, subject to review by the planning board. G, the site plan shall show measures to reduce and abate noise and odors generated from the site that will impact surrounding communities. H, boy, we have a lot of these on this one. John, do I need to read all of these decision criteria out loud?
So, no, these are the site plan standards. The decision criteria is basically, I know it's labeled decision criteria, but it just has to conform to those standards.
Yeah.
You don't have to read them out loud.
Okay.
Just the conditions and findings.
Okay. Thank you. And it's funny. I think there's more listed. The details are listed here, whereas normally we don't list that detail, which is why I was looking at the next 2 pages that I was contemplating reading aloud. So I guess the best way to summarize decision criteria is that the design shall conform to the site plan standards as set forth in 210.136.1. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to read through these and see if that prompts any additional questions. So I'm just going to set my timer here, and we'll reconvene in maybe it's 4 minutes.
What?
All right. Any other questions about how this proposal conforms to the site plan standards? Okay. And again, this is where we have our peer review and a lot of discussion thus far as it relates back to these site plan standards. Let's go ahead and move forward on a waivers. They are not requesting any waivers. Applicant, I just want to confirm that, but don't see any waiver requests here and don't see anything highlighted from our peer review.
Confirmed.
So we have next on our outline would be proposed findings. And I'm grateful to John for drafting this. I do want to remind the board that the findings are our opportunity. If there was something additional that we want to really reinforce in this review, the findings are the best place to do it. The proposed findings read as such that the proposed major project site plan conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210.136.1 of the zoning bylaws. And then secondly, pursuant to section 210.124.1, the development triggers site plan review for the alteration of a parking area. As such, the development is required to provide at least 10% of the total parking spaces as EVSE installed parking spaces, or 20% of the total spaces, aka 9 parking spaces, as EV ready. The applicant has stated that they will provide 5 electric vehicle installed EV ready spaces in conformance with section 214.124.1. So that is our new EV parking requirement. To members of the board, are there any other proposed findings that we would want to include here? Okay, so we're good with these findings. These are reasonably typical for us here. Conditions. So I do need to read these aloud, and I am going to have to add a few with regards to the late breaking changes with regards to the lighting and the screening. So, but it is a requirement that I read these aloud. So at this point, I will read the proposed conditions. Number 1, after finding that it was in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the site plan standards, the planning board waived strict compliance with the following provisions of 210.136.1. Well, we didn't waive anything because there are no requested waivers. 2, the Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under construction for compliance with the approved decision of site plan review. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown on the plan, if applicable. If the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of the stormwater management system or any other component of the site plan, the applicant shall be responsible for the cost of those inspections. 3, all construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. 4, the applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the project, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the Department of Public Works Director. 5, the applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and debris from the site in accordance with good construction practices on the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. 6, all exterior lighting within the development project, whether shown in the approved site plan or required by the Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward and not upward or outward, and shall not spill onto adjacent property. 7, all fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. So I think actually both of those proposed conditions would cover the remaining items in the engineering review. 8, if construction is not commenced within 3 years of the date of filing of the site plan decision with the town clerk, approval shall be automatically rescinded unless such time is extended by the board. For the purposes of this condition, the term commenced shall mean the commencement of site work. 9, construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article I of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. 10, the applicant shall submit final as-built plans to the planning board prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. 11, the applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of a building permit. This point of contact information shall be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete. 12, a completed signed construction management plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant shall also submit a revised full plan set, which incorporates all the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. 13, a completed signed long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of construction. This can be combined with the construction management plan if preferred by the applicant. 14, a signed illicit discharge statement shall be provided to the planning board prior to construction. 15, erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and the construction management plan. If they are found to be inadequate, the applicant shall immediately correct any deficiencies. Exclamation point on that one. We've had a lot of challenges in town during construction, and we know that runoff and erosion is far worse, and just want to make it crystal clear that we expect the site, especially during construction, to be maintained and that there not be any runoff. 16, the planning board shall receive a sign off confirming that the site contractor and any major subcontractors have received the construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. To the applicants, are you comfortable with all of those conditions?
I am.
Okay.
Ken Driscoll.
To the planning board, are there any additional proposed conditions that we should add to this list?
Chair, Gary?
Yes, go ahead, Vic.
On the 9, I mean, I know that the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is the construction. I just want to understand that, during the school rush hour, this one, is there any condition or is any plan? How do we mitigate? Because there will be heavy construction movement during that time. So
it's a good question. I think working on site versus deliveries or construction in and out are likely two different things, but I guess I'd look to the applicant and see if they have any thoughts on how to kind of ensure that we minimize disruption to a pretty heavy traffic volume at the start and finish of school.
Through the chair, our thoughts were we recognize the traffic in particular between 7 and 8 in the morning, that we'd be willing to, specifically through any of the site management, all the, kind of the construction, not the construction of the building, but all the site work, we would be fine with starting after 8 in the morning. Just to work with the, make sure there's no additional traffic there.
I think we've done this in the past on school projects, but I wonder if we revise the condition to say no deliveries between 7 and 8 a.m. and then between the after school hour there, and that might just be a way of ensuring compliance with that. Would that make sense?
We can live with that. We'd be fine with that, and we would pass that on to our vendors and contractors.
To the chair, Gary?
Yeah.
Can we increase it to like 7 a.m. to 8:30, just 30 minutes more in the morning?
Through the chair, we'd be fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then what about in the afternoon period? I don't know what time school gets out at middle school and high school, which are the primary concern here, get out at 2:30ish.
2:30 is what they start rolling out. 2:30 is what they start rolling out. So yeah, maybe 2 to 3:30 is, again, if that's something.
I want to be careful to not. When does traffic start backing up there?
Through the chair again, I'm, having a business there, we recognize traffic, but it is really outbound from the school. There's some inbound pickup, and it's a little different situation where the morning, a lot of commuter traffic as well. So I just, while we're willing to work with it, I do think there's a little different situation there. That's all.
Okay.
And that being said, fully recognizing safety issues relative to, the school requirements.
Ken, do you have a suggestion or a counter proposal on, delivery restrictions in the afternoon, or it sounds like it's less of a concern for you, but,
I mean, we typically wouldn't have any, we prefer not to. So we'd ask all our contractors and vendors to take deliveries after 8:30 and maybe no later than 1. So we'd be willing to stipulate that. I think the other traffic, contractor flow traffic, would be nominal after that anyways.
Yeah.
So,
okay. So maybe what we do is we revise, Condition 9, construction may occur between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Site deliveries shall only occur between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m.
That would be fine.
Monday through or Saturdays or Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. No restrictions on Saturday.
Makes sense.
Vic, does that sound reasonable?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for
All right.
completing.
It's a good suggestion. All right. Any other proposed conditions? Okay. Before we get to a vote here, I'm going to open it up to any final comments from either the planning board or from the public. So we'll start with the planning board. Any comments from the planning board? Any comments from the public?
See. So just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. I don't think we came to any kind of a definitive situation as to what happens if this system doesn't work and it does impact the property. Is there going to be somebody that's going to be performing the fix if that needs to be made other than us?
So I think where I'm at on this, and this is just my perspective, and this is based largely on the peer review engineer, is that what they've designed conforms to the Massachusetts standards. And I also weigh heavily on the belief that regardless of the situation, it will be a substantial improvement from what's there now. So it complies with our current standards, and it is certainly there are no circumstances where it would be worse than what's there today. And we have the applicant engineers that have designed it. We've had a peer review that reviews it on behalf of the town. And to me, it checks those boxes that it meets the standards, and it's a meaningful improvement over what's there now.
Okay, thank you.
That's just my perspective, but again, there's a reason there's more than one person on the board. All right. Any other final public comments? Okay, so then on that, I will entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud.
So moved.
Second, Ron Fever.
Assuming there's no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote on the findings?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Elise?
I don't think she's here tonight,
Not here
Gary.
today.
She's here.
Oh,
I see her.
Sorry, I'm here trying to unmute. I vote yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. And on that note, I will entertain a motion that the board approve the major project site plan with the conditions previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved, Ron Prefer.
Second, Matthew Vronka.
Any further discussion?
So, Gary, we'll have this updated, this one, right? The condition number 9, and will be published again.
Yes, as read aloud. Yep.
Sorry, Gary, I accidentally muted you when I was trying to unmute myself.
All right, there we go.
Would you like me to read that conditioning back, the amended one?
Sure. Just to make sure we're all aligned. Yes.
Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. Deliveries to the site shall only occur between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion that is on the table? Seeing none. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Elise? Elise, you there? All right, we'll move forward. Matthew?
Sorry, I'm here. I'm here. I'm not used to doing this on my phone.
That's okay. We appreciate you calling.
I vote yes.
Okay. Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So that motion carries. And the last thing for us to do is I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing for, what's the address here? 87 Hayden Row.
So moved.
Rob Benson, second.
There should be no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Jane, yes.
Ron?
Ron, yes.
Elise?
Yes.
You were ready that time. Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So appreciate the patience as we work through this one. And it sounds like the applicant will see you in the near future on that stormwater management plan. But appreciate the additional details and work. Look forward to seeing how this project progresses.
Well, thank you all for your support, and we're excited to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
We still got a ways to go. Next on our list is coming back to 24 Chestnut special permit for inclusionary zoning. And believe our applicant is on.
I am.
Hey, Rick.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's funny, the participant list on the side, it shows up alphabetical, except in some circumstances. So I quickly scanned it, didn't see any R's, but you were up towards the top. So I know I did have a chance to go back and listen to the conversation, listen to the last meeting, and Rick, I also touched base with John just as a quick update, and I think. Do you want to give us a quick update or anything new or different or changed or that you want to share with the board on this?
Sure. Well, at the last hearing, I had offered, and the board seemed to express some interest in me providing some more sort of concrete details as to why we felt that the special permit was, number one, necessary, and number two, warranted. So I did put together a little memo that broke some of that down. I don't know if that can get put up on the screen somehow. It might be, I don't need to read it verbatim, but it might help frame the conversation a little bit. So I don't know if somebody can somehow make that happen. I think I can do it if I screen shared, but.
No,
there it is. Thank you. So anyways, using that as a point of reference, I guess one thing that did come up in the meeting was ultimately finding for our special permit application would need to demonstrate a significant benefit to the town. And I think there's some conversation surrounding what was the actual purpose and intent of the bylaw. And so I think, first and foremost, just it's pretty crystal clear, and to quote from the bylaw, the purpose of this article is to increase the inventory of affordable housing in Hopkinton. So, I don't think there's any ambiguity there. And then I don't necessarily need to read it unless it would be helpful, but the bylaw goes on to provide the sort of defined mechanism to do that by including an affordable unit on site and stating essentially that unit needed to be identical to the market rate units in terms of lot size, house size, amenities, specifications, etc. And then I tried to provide a breakdown of, once again, sort of what the practical implications of that requirement are. And running through those numbers quickly, I think they're up there on the screen. You can see that we have land and infrastructure in terms of building roadways, drainage systems, et cetera, 435,000. House construction at 4,200 square feet to be consistent with sort of what we project the other homes in the development to be at $1,050,000. Soft costs associated with development at $58,000 for total costs associated with that on-site affordable unit of $1,543,000. And then based on the DHCD qualifications that dictate the sale price, I haven't updated this number recently. I think it actually may have gone down a little bit since interest rates have gone up, but we're looking at selling that unit in the neighborhood of $228,500 for a net loss of $1,314,500.
That's a heck of a deal.
So I can say with a pretty high degree of confidence that it is just inconceivable that any development can support that type of a loss, before the development even starts. So I don't see how this will satisfy the goal of the bylaw of creating more affordable housing. However, the bylaw does provide the two other mechanisms in terms of the payment in lieu and the providing unit off-site. We certainly thought it was, while still more costly to us, I think much more beneficial to the town to provide the unit off-site, which is what we've continued to propose. And I think that given that I don't believe that there's any viable path to creating an affordable unit on-site, it seems clear that allowing an off-site unit is the only realistic way to increase the inventory of affordable housing in Hopkinton, and therefore a special permit allowing an off-site dwelling definitely provides a significant net benefit to achieving the town's affordable housing objectives, which is what I believe the bylaw is intended to do. So hopefully that gives you some more transparency into why we have made this application, and can maybe demonstrate to everybody what how it works.
All right, thanks, Rick. I appreciate the overview and the example here. It certainly illustrates the challenges that you're up against. I will say I think the tricky part of this is the size of the house, and certainly to build and sell a 4,200 square foot new construction home for $228,000, that only exacerbates the challenges. I realize I don't think it says anywhere that it needs to be the same size. And I will say that I think in other developments in Hopkinton, the affordable units have not been as large, but certainly they need to be similar in style and design and appearance and construction and whatnot. They don't want to be singled out as like, well, that's the affordable house over there. So certainly there's limits or constraints as to how much smaller it could be. So I think this is a helpful example. From a process perspective, I think that collectively we could probably talk about this, not just all night tonight, but many nights. It's a tough one to address. I know I've had a number of people reach out to me about this, and I kind of want to stay focused. I think we already had a lot of discussion on it, and I want to try to avoid having to repeat things that we've already discussed. But I want to take a moment and just see, based on this example, if anyone from the planning board or anyone from the public, for that matter, has anything new to add to this discussion.
Through the chair, Vic here.
Yep, go ahead, Vic.
So it's more to Rick. Rick, just a clarification. I believe you mentioned you're building like 6 or 7 houses. Am I right? In previous discussions on that site.
Correct. Our intent is to propose 7 homes on this site and then 1 affordable home off-site.
So are you saying that all the houses are of the same size of 4,200 square feet? Is that what I'm
saying? I mean, that's a generalization. Obviously, we haven't designed all the houses, so they're not all going to be the exact same size. I think that's sort of the size that is most likely. And I do understand that the affordable unit does not necessarily need to be as big, but it is certainly my understanding that it has to be close enough in size that you can't drive through the development and point and say, oh, there's the affordable unit. So could it be 3,500 square feet? I guess that becomes subjective to some degree. I would put that question back to you guys as to how small, satisfies the requirement. But I can tell you that
I will say, in full disclosure, I do still think there's a lot of different ways to address it. And you're right. If the other 7 houses are 4,200 square feet, this one can't be 2,200 square feet. But if the other houses are mixed in size and style, then the affordable one could be smaller. And again, I look at the neighborhoods that we have in Hopkinton, and most of our established neighborhoods, not the newer construction ones, have a pretty substantial mix of housing sizes. So I agree with you that if all the other houses are in that size range, it couldn't be. But I'm not. Yeah, I think there's still some ways. I'm not going to comment as to whether they're profitable or not. But that's also not my job. But I think there are some ways that you could mix in housing of different sizes in a neighborhood.
Hey, I have a question from the public. If he's still open for public, Gary?
Sure, Sam. Go ahead. Just if you can start with your name and address.
Yeah, Sam Sater, 26 Kibble Road. Just because I'm not familiar with affordable housing, I am familiar with the ruling that last in the last town meeting, so I understand the question at hand. But does affordable housing support what it would take to maintain a property like that? Like you got the property for a steal at $250,000, but is there, like, how does one maintain a property like that? And would that be a challenge for them? And if so, then what does that do to the rest of the properties in the area, and including theirs? Could it put them at a disadvantage as well?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. And I'll look to John and see if he has any guidance on that. But I think holistically, the challenge is that I don't think the affordable housing rules are intended to be applied to 4,200 square foot homes.
And I think, and I know John might answer, but I think the following question for me is, would this be a way to always not have to build an affordable houses by always looking to build, premium luxury homes, which I think is the default stance at this point anyway in town for most of them.
John's computer just locked up.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Okay.
I had to restart. I was hoping it didn't kill the meeting, but looks like it didn't.
It did not.
It did not. Great. So I did not hear Sam's comment, so I don't know what the question was.
I'll restate it. I think I was just my lack of knowledge of affordable housing. I was wondering if affordable housing and the mechanisms that surround it offer any support for what it would take to maintain a property that size. So clearly there's a way to acquire it if you qualify, but what does it take to maintain a property like that, which some are familiar is pretty significant. So
maintain, heat,
everything,
irrigate,
lights, landscaping, snow plowing, everything. So I'm just curious, they got in the house, now what? And then if that's the case, then if every development intentionally or otherwise is in that sort of price range and the size range, wouldn't it always make it challenging to build affordable housing?
So I'm not aware of any assistance for those types of things. I mean, there is assistance for heat and utilities and all that kind of stuff. Whether somebody who purchased a 4,200 square foot house and can't afford the utilities because the house is so big would qualify for those services is another question. That's something the state would probably have to answer. To your question of whether building these large luxury homes is going to be a strategy to avoid affordable housing, I mean, potentially, but that's also market driven. So people can build 4,200 square foot homes, and if the market tanks and they can't sell them, they're probably not going to build those same homes anymore.
Well, John, sorry, but it maybe unintentionally. I think to your point, if it is a market driven, then every development is going to be faced with the same challenge, right?
Correct. Yes, and that's the challenge is if these developments are expensive luxury homes and it costs $1 million to build these homes, then yes, those types of developments will always face this challenge. I think right now, particularly, is a unique situation where building costs are expensive, interest rates are expensive, everything is expensive. So I'm not a developer. I can't really speak to the cost of everything, but to answer your question, yes, this would always be a challenge for these luxury, high cost developments.
Thank you.
So, I think to me, there's a couple of pathways forward here. This is just kind of my simplification of it. Option one is that if the planning board were to grant this special permit, then what that does is that it adds one future affordable unit to the Hopkinton affordable housing inventory. It would likely pave the way for the applicant to, propose their subdivision. It certainly has a negligible or a slightly favorable impact on the percentage of affordable housing in town, but it's also just adding one unit. So, again, there's, but I think that's one pathway. The second pathway is that if the planning board were to deny the special permit, then the applicant has a couple of options. Option one would be to not develop the site because under the current requirements, they don't see it as financially viable. Or two, they could go back to the drawing board and see if there is some other design option. They could go back and negotiate a lower purchase price, or I'm don't know what's out there, but they could go back and try to find some way to make this work that does comply with our bylaws. And to me, those are kind of the two different pathways and advantages or disadvantages of each. Ronnie.
Through the chair, I just maybe I missed. I just want to confirm. So the unit that you're like, how many units do you foresee that could potentially be subdivided into? The reason I ask is there could be a third option.
7.
Again, through the chair, John. How much funds do we have currently in the I forget what it's called, those that went through the pay in lieu of fund?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say between 3 and 4 million.
Okay, so where nothing is being done, we're asking based upon this subdivision that, as I recall, 1 unit is necessary. Well, if they have come up with something that can be more than 1 unit, then my potential third option would be team up with the funds that aren't being utilized, and they cover the 6, then he only is responsible for the subdivision is only responsible for 1, because otherwise, remember, we're bringing potentially 7 units into play, and but the developer is only responsible for 1 based upon the plan. So let us take advantage of money that's just sitting around. I don't know how feasible that is, but I look at it as simple math.
Sorry, Ronnie. I'm not quite following your proposal. So I understand the idea that of drawing some funds from the affordable housing, but how many affordable units are you thinking?
From my understanding from the proposal is there is a potential for this 1 unit to be made into 7 units. Is that correct there, Rick? Or did I misunderstand that?
Well, I think I'm not sure I'm understanding. So what we're proposing, what we will likely propose is a 7-unit subdivision, and then providing 1 affordable unit offsite.
Okay. So no, my apologies. I thought that you had, again, I was mixing and matching. I thought you had found something that could be broken into additional units, like a duplex or quadplex. If that is a possibility, then I think that we could team with the money that we have in the Affordable Housing Fund, which is just sitting. So I'm saying is if there's a home that could be parsed into 2 halves, we have 2 units. I believe that that you should only be responsible. My opinion, responsible for 1 of them, and we could utilize the Affordable Housing Fund for the other half, and therefore lowering your cost, as well as bringing 2 units into affordable houses into play. Both would be off-site, but that is just 1 possibility that I'm sort of thinking. I apologize with the number 7.
Ronnie, just to summarize, the basis of your approach is that that the applicant could effectively draw off of some of the affordable housing fund and build multiple affordable units as part of it. And I will say I don't know how that might work. I think that's also at this point is probably outside of the scope of what we're debating here. Certainly could be an option, but without a lot more work, I think it's hard. It'd be hard for us to, given what's been proposed in front of us.
No, I understand. It's my growing frustration, not to you, obviously, Gary, but is we have money sitting specifically earmarked for a task, and it's not being done, and we're closely bonking our heads closer and closer to that affordable housing threshold, a state mandate, and we're not doing it. And so I was just trying to come up with a third option that, again, I misunderstood on the unit size, but again, you're responsible for one unit. If we can find a fourplex and make that available, and if again, depends if the contractors are willing to participate in this. But again, a lot of cogs in the wheel that would have to align. Just a proposal.
Yeah. John, I know you added a bunch of new comments as part of your review. And are there any of those that you want to hit on or share with both the board and the public? I mean, they're in the packet, but you want to share your thoughts from the number of conversations that you've had over the past 2 weeks on this?
Sure. I don't think anything is really going to change the discussion. It's just giving some background on the developer's proposed costs and how those are generally agreed by Massachusetts Housing Partnership people who said that those are similar to what they've seen in the field. Also we talked about reducing the house size, similar to what the board was talking about of, does an affordable homeowner really need 4,200 square feet, and would they be able to heat it? But we've heard from the LIP manager at DHCD, now EOHLC, that they're willing to work with the town, and if the town accepts it, then they're usually going to accept it, but there are limits to that. You can't go too extreme. We were talking somewhere in the realm of 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. And then I brought that up with the developer, and he said that would be possible, but the cost calculation would change and it wouldn't be that significant of a cost savings anyway. And then some other stuff was just not related to this specifically, but the inclusionary zoning bylaw may need to be looked at to see how we can, if the goal really is to encourage affordable housing, there's always the sentiment that it needs to be carrot and a stick, and what carrots can be offered in the future in terms of incentives to encourage developers to build on-site units. And I think Rick had mentioned the main one is just really allowing higher density, allowing for another building lot to be developed, or however it would work in any particular development. So I just think that's something the board may need to think about and consider moving forward. How do we get carrots and sticks involved in this rather than just sticks? But this is just always an evolving process, and we're always learning new stuff. So I just want to include that for the board to understand.
Yeah. So I think we can kind of move forward here. There are not any waivers requested. Decision criteria, again, this is what we are weighing against here, and those decision criteria reads, in order to approve a special permit, the planning board must identify a specific finding that there will be a significant net benefit to achieving the town's affordable housing objectives as a result of allowing the construction of rehabilitation of a dwelling unit on a different locus than the development. Additionally, special permits must conform to section 210.223.g by meeting the following two criteria. 1, all applicable criteria and standards set forth in this chapter have been satisfied. And 2, granted special permit will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this chapter. And just as a reminder for folks as well, that special permit requires 2/3 majority, so it requires 6. It would require 6 favorable votes. Any questions or comments about the decision criteria? And I will say, to me, the key question there is significant net benefit. That's kind of what I've been tossing around, but any questions or comments on the decision criteria?
Gary, could I say something?
Sure, Chuck.
Thank you.
Name and address. You know the drill.
Chuck Joseph, 5 Benson Road. It's a little perplexing to me, the discussion, and I just want to, I've had so many discussions with many of you before this bylaw was passed and about its possible effects, and it's kind of playing out the way I imagined it might. My concern is the first line in the new bylaw says to add to the affordable housing stock in Hopkinton is the purpose of the bylaw. And then in order to get a special permit, you have to demonstrate a net benefit to the town. And in this case, Rick is proposing a net benefit of 1 affordable unit off-site. And he's laid out his arguments pragmatically about why it can't be on-site. And Gary, when you were just describing it before, you said, but we're just getting 1 unit. But that is exactly what your bylaw asks the developer to do, to provide 1 affordable unit. So I believe he's providing the exact net benefit that the bylaw asked for in providing for subdivisions under 10, 1 affordable unit, and he's providing a pragmatic alternative way to get that. So when people start, and I admire the creative thinking, and I hope there's a lot more of it that goes into the future because it's the only way we're going to get affordable housing in town. But, to try to say to get 2 affordable units on 1 lot, those are zoning changes and variances and things like that that are outside the scope of this discussion, I think. That's my opinion. So I think what Rick is proposing is the pragmatic alternative to fulfill the purpose of the bylaw, which is to provide a net benefit of 1 affordable unit.
So, Chuck, my only counter to that is that the bylaw isn't just for the special permit related to building off-site. The bylaw is for the inclusion of an affordable unit within the subdivision itself.
Right.
And the special permit is what requires that, as it says, significant net benefit to achieving the town's affordable housing objective. And so I think there is a by right means within the bylaw that doesn't require a special permit that still is encouraging a build of affordable unit. And I appreciate that in the way this subdivision has been envisioned, that it doesn't work very well. But I just want to point that out, that the bylaw isn't just the special permit for offsite. The bylaw is applicable across multiple circumstances.
And if I can, Gary,
sure.
In response to that, I appreciate that and I understand it. But as somebody who's spent 35 years in the real estate world in Hopkinton, the pragmatism of this is going to require some more modification of our zoning, et cetera, in order to be able to actually build affordable new units. I don't think the way we're currently structured is really geared towards that.
I 100% agree with that. And the crux of the issue is that a 4,200 square foot affordable unit does not make any sense for anybody.
Right.
Okay, so we've got decision criteria. We don't have waivers. The proposed findings, and again, the proposed findings are written in the affirmative. So there will be a significant net benefit to achieving the town's affordable housing objectives as a result of allowing the construction or rehabilitation of an affordable dwelling unit on a different locus than the development. And specifically, that benefit would be the addition of an affordable unit to Hopkinton's housing stock. Does that appropriately capture what we're looking at here?
Through the chair.
I think that's the crux of it, is that it's the benefit would be 1 affordable unit.
Through the chair.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So I guess the word significant benefit or significant net benefit is it's really difficult to. It's not concrete. Like what is on one side versus the other. Like if we look at our last the last known numbers we have of affordable housing units, the town was at 14% affordable housing units in town, and we think at the next point we will be lower percentage than 14, but still north of 10. So we don't know if this, like as we sit here in this meeting, 1 out of 8 is what this would mean. 1 out of 8 units would be affordable. We don't know if that's bringing our numbers up from where we are today. We do know from the last time we had the measurements taken, it would bring us down. So that's the reality of where we are. I think the bylaw is very descriptive, and it's going to be extremely hard for any developer to build a traditional development with this in place. And if we want, like we would have to go before town meeting and get the bylaw changed. Like I just don't see any development, like the precedent of it's too expensive is the wrong precedent to set. And it's as simple as that.
So, and just from a process perspective, what I want to do is I want to align on what the proposed findings would be, and then we can go ahead and debate and vote on that proposed finding. So I think, you know, and Rob, I think there's a place for your thoughts there. But we have to have something to vote on before we can debate on it and vote. I guess to the applicant, is there any other you know, again, in terms of the stated benefit, is there anything else that you would propose that we add to the stated benefit beyond the addition of an affordable unit?
No, I think that's clearly the benefit. The bylaw clearly states the goal is to create affordable housing. I don't think it speaks to percentages or anything of that nature. It just speaks to creating affordable housing, and I think this is the way you can create affordable housing, given the way the bylaw has been drafted.
Okay. And then the other proposed findings would be all applicable criteria and standards set forth in Chapter 210 have been satisfied. And 3, granting the special permit will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of Chapter 210. Anything else from folks to consider in the proposed findings? Okay, and then proposed conditions. I'm going to go ahead and read these quickly. The location of the affordable housing unit shall be approved by a vote of the planning board prior to the issuance of the first building permit for the market rate units located within the proposed subdivision at 0/24 Chestnut Street. No building permit shall be issued for a market rate unit within the subdivision until a specific location for the affordable housing unit has been approved by the planning board. The request for approval submitted to the planning board shall include information which demonstrates the construction or redevelopment of a unit at the location requested is feasible. This is new territory for us, so I do want to encourage people to think about these proposed conditions. So, 2, the affordable housing unit shall be constructed and a certificate of occupancy shall be issued prior to the issuance of the building permit. Certificate of occupancy for the 4th unit in the proposed market rate subdivision at 0/24 Chestnut Street. Is that the 4th unit? John, what does that mean? Why is it specifically calling out the 4th unit? Did we lose John again?
He's looking.
No, I'm here. I'm just looking. What condition was this?
The second one. And specifically I was just curious as to why it's calling it the 4th unit in the proposed market rate subdivision.
I don't know. That may have been intended to be the 1st unit and just got auto-corrected, or I typed it wrong.
Okay, I think it would be
we
the
don't know why
first,
it's
because
fourth.
the affordable housing unit shall be constructed and a certificate of occupancy shall be issued prior to the issuance of building permit certificate of occupancy for the first unit in the proposed market rate subdivision. The only thing I can think of is if you were letting them get started, but before they had a majority, you know, like, do we need that affordable unit to be built and constructed with a CO before they build any of the subdivision? And I'm wondering if maybe your thought in the mindset behind this was that as long as it was done before half of the buildings in the new development were constructed.
Honestly, I don't remember what the intent was if there was a fourth unit, so I would leave it up to the board to choose which unit you would like to be in that condition.
Okay.
Do I get any opportunity to weigh in on any of this, or so much?
You do, Rick. I actually like the idea of the fourth unit because I don't know, given that first, just from a cash flow perspective, I think there's enough protection for the town, and knowing that the developer is going to lose money on that first unit, I think it's reasonable to allow them to recoup some of their costs. That's just my perspective. Rick, I don't know if you feel any differently.
No, I mean, I think it would be pretty draconian on top of the requirements as currently drafted to then require someone to lay out all that money up front before they could try and mitigate any of those losses.
Yeah. Does anyone on the board feel differently than that? Okay, so we'll leave that as written with the fourth unit.
But I was a little bit confused by some of the earlier conditions because it seemed to be that you were speaking to identifying a location on site, which is not what we're doing.
The location of the affordable housing unit shall be approved by a vote of the planning board prior to the issuance of the first building permit for the market rate units. So what we're asking is that the site be identified and that you demonstrate that the reconstruction or redevelopment is feasible.
Okay, so I guess my only comment there was, could we consider, rather than the first building permit be issued, the first certificate of occupancy? Because once again, to go out and find a unit, secure it, put it under contract is going to take a little bit of time. So to leave the project dormant until we do that is, again, I think a little draconian.
It's a fair question.
So we can't sell a unit, we can't recoup any money, but at least it gives us that window while we're building the unit to go find another unit to purchase or construct somewhere in town, because that could take a little time.
I'm comfortable with that because the units, at the end of the day, you could go start construction on 6 of them. You can't sell any until, you can't sell any until, you can sell 3. If this were to move forward, you could sell 3 of them before that's built, but you can't sell anything else until that 4th one is until the affordable one is all done.
Yeah, and correct.
Planning board, any thoughts on revising proposed condition number 1 instead of no building permit shall be issued to read no occupancy permit shall be issued for a market rate unit?
Sounds reasonable.
Do we run into issues with the COs being issued when they weren't supposed to with Legacy Farms, or that was just a...
It's a fair question, given what's coming next on our agenda tonight. But I think we've got to assume that we can enforce the conditions.
Hey, Gary, I had a quick question. So through the chair, this might be better for John, actually. Who issues the certificate of occupancy?
The building inspector.
The building inspector, okay.
All right, any objections? It sounds like we're comfortable changing building permit to occupancy permit? Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes, John.
No building permit shall be issued for a market rate unit within the subdivision until a specific location has been approved. Is that remaining as is?
No, that changes to no occupancy permit shall be issued for a market rate unit within the subdivision until a specific location for the affordable housing unit has been approved by the planning board.
Okay, so we're changing both first sentence and second sentence.
Yes.
All right. Would you like me to read it?
I can read it. The location of the affordable housing unit shall be approved by a vote of the planning board prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit for the market rate units located within the proposed subdivision at 024 Chestnut Street. No occupancy permit shall be issued for a market rate unit within the subdivision until a specific location for the affordable housing unit has been approved by the planning board. The request for approval submitted to the planning board shall include information which demonstrates that the construction or redevelopment of a unit at the location requested is feasible.
Presumably, we should keep it as certificate of occupancy for consistency with 2, just in terms of the specific phrasing.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Condition 2, instead of occupancy certificate, says certificate of occupancy. I was just suggesting we keep it consistent with what's in condition 2.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I do have one other follow-up question. What's the mechanism to get that location approved? Is that a hearing? Is that just a notice to the planning board? Like, how do we do that?
It would be a vote of the planning board.
So would we have to schedule a public hearing to do that, or how do we do that?
Through the chair.
I'm looking at John, but I don't think it would be a public. I don't know, John. Would that need to be a public?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a public hearing. I think it would submit a letter to the board identifying the location, and then the board can vote on it at the next meeting. It wouldn't be a public hearing.
Okay.
Because there's no permit being approved.
Fine. I've never done that before, so I was curious how one would do it.
All right. Number 3, the affordable housing unit shall be established so as to be considered as a local initiative program, LIP units, in compliance with the requirement of the same as specified by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And that unit shall count towards the town's requirements under MGL C40B section 20-23. 4, the affordable housing unit shall be subject to a legal use deed restriction that runs with the land, is recorded at the Registry of Deeds, provides for affordability in perpetuity, identifies the subsidizing agency and monitoring agent if applicable, and restricts occupancy to income eligible households as defined by Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development. 5, the deed to the affordable housing unit, if developed as a homeownership unit, shall contain a restriction against renting or leasing of said unit during the period for which the housing unit contains a restriction on affordability, unless a written waiver is explicitly allowed by consent of the town and the Commonwealth. Questions, comments, discussion on the proposed findings?
Through the chair.
Yes, John.
Rick had submitted other comments on the conditions, and I think there was a question on 2, but I just wanted to confirm that the way that it's written, is that acceptable, or do we want to have a discussion on that?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
I actually don't remember. I would have to find my comments. Was it?
I can bring them up. So it says, it is likely we will be purchasing an existing dwelling rather than constructing a new unit, so a certificate of occupancy might not be applicable. Could the board consider a condition that the affordable unit will have been secured and subsequently sold prior to the issuance of a building permit for the 4th market rate unit within the subdivision?
I think that's a fair question.
So if I could answer. I guess the intent is generally when units are purchased for this, there's some modifications that have to take place interior to the unit. and therefore a certificate of occupancy would still be necessary. But I guess there are situations where that might not apply. So I'll pass it to the board to see how they want to handle it.
So to be complete here, maybe we revise this to say the affordable housing unit shall be constructed. I was thinking I could wordsmith this on the fly, but maybe I can't. But I could see a circumstance where we would need to give an option of either that it shall be constructed in a CO issued, or that
How about we just
be sold as an affordable unit with the deed restrictions as required in following conditions.
But what if we just say it just has to be sold? So that then the ambiguity of the certificate of occupancy goes away. And I think your primary concern is that you've gotten the unit. So once it's been sold, you've got the unit.
Okay, seems reasonable. So then it would read the affordable housing unit shall be sold with applicable deed restriction prior to the issuance of the building permit certificate of occupancy for the fourth unit in the proposed market rate subdivision at 024 Chestnut Street.
Gary, who's responsible for ensuring that the house as delivered is habitable and in good condition? Is that something the town would do as part of that conveyance?
Through the chair.
Yes, John.
Yeah, that's going to be partially the town and also DHCD. Well, EOHLC, formerly DHCD. The state reviews this type of thing, and there's oversight on that.
Yes, that would all happen before it's sold. As
Yes.
part of the process. Okay.
Yes.
Almost like a mortgagee requiring a home inspection, or a mortgage holder requiring a home inspection. All right.
It's a little more rigorous than that, but
yeah, I know. Yeah.
because
But there's
there's a lot of hoops for us to jump through. There's a whole lottery system that has to be done by registered agents, so that the units are inspected, the applicants are inspected. It's a whole process unto itself.
Yeah. Okay, so those are our proposed conditions. Any final comments from the board or from the public before we take a vote on the findings and then the conditions and approval?
I have a question from the public.
Sure, Sam. Go ahead.
Just a clarification, Rob, earlier you stated percentage, 10, 15%, and I was curious, how is that calculated? And I surely misheard, but you said that this would lower our percentage or something like that. I was just looking for clarity around that. And while you're at it, where are we supposed to be as a town with regards to our affordable housing percentage?
So where are we supposed to be could be a debated number, but if we drop below 10% affordable housing stock, then that opens us up to unfriendly 40B developments, which can be developed without any local zoning oversight. So with regards to the number going down in this situation, I'm not sure how that would work if it was 1 in 8 houses, and unless we were, I don't know how the number would, I don't know how the percentage of affordable housing would go down,
Gary,
given that
it's
we know we're
12%.
north of 10%.
Can I respond, Gary?
Sure.
So through the chair, so we don't, as a town, we don't get our affordable housing, the percentage of affordable housing units on a day-to-day basis or a year-to-year basis. It's only calculated every so many years. So the last time it was calculated how many affordable housing units we had as a percentage of overall dwelling units in town, it was about 14%. So that was the last known number. We believe that number has gone down, but the last known number is 14. So going to 12.5% would be a reduction from our last known number of 14%. That's the only point I was trying to make there.
Okay, I think you were referring to the just that because it's not real time calculated, not that this development or the way it's structured would potentially impact that number. Through the chair.
I was just trying to make through the chair. I was just trying to make a point that it's not. That's the only information we know. We know the last time it was calculated. We know what this development would do. It would add 1 out of 8 units. Whether if the waiver is if this passes, which would be 12.5% of the project would be affordable housing units. So that's what we know. That's the only point I was trying to make.
Through the chair, I think John's been trying to jump in.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
So I don't want to ruffle any feathers here, but we did get revised numbers. The denominator changes every 10 years. The numerator can change as frequently as you want, as long as affordable units are done. And the calculation can be done at any point in time. The most recent number we got, we are at, I forget what it is, either 10.91 or 10.99%. But we are above the 10, below 11. And so the calculation is if we get 10 market rate units and 1 affordable unit, we are, or I should say 9 market rate units and 1 affordable unit, we're staying at that 10%. If we go more market rate, then we're reducing our overall calculation. If we're going fewer market rate and still 1, then that obviously that ratio makes the calculation go up. I don't know what it would be if we factored in these numbers, but we are at 10.9 something. And it'll change again whenever we add affordable units because the percentage could then go up. The only time the percentage would go down is if we lose affordable units or we gain market rate units. But that really won't come into play until 2030 because the market rate units generally don't get counted until the census comes around. We had to wait 3 extra years for the census to give us these figures. That's why there's so much confusion going on. Usually we get them a lot sooner, but we had to wait a while for this one. We actually just got them in May. We didn't even get them that far.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very helpful. Just one follow-up question. Is it calculated by units or is square footage factor in anywhere?
No, square footage does not factor in. It's just the total number of units.
Units. Okay. Thank you.
Housing units.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think we're ready to vote here. From a process perspective, we'll vote on the findings first. If the findings pass, then we'll move on to an approval with conditions. If the findings do not pass, then do we stop there then, John? I just want to make sure that people I want to make sure that people understand what that the board knows what they're voting on.
So generally, if the findings are approved, that means that the permit should be approved because all of the requirements have been voted on by the board. That would trigger an approval. If the findings are not approved, then the board probably should make a new finding that it does not meet the requirements and specify which requirements it does not meet. And then you would vote on that. And if those findings are found true, then you can vote on a denial based on those findings, or you can vote positively on an approval, deny it, and then the findings would still be voted on, and then that would be the reason for denial.
Okay. And
so
I will
clarify the procedure.
Go ahead, Matt.
So to clarify the procedure, if we vote on the findings, we are, as a board, agreeing that the addition of a affordable housing unit is a significant net benefit to the town under the bylaws and the regulations.
Correct.
And I want to mention the board can also add more findings if any particular situation is unique, that can be factored in, or if there's anything else that the board wants included specific to this application to explain why that decision was made. The findings really are kind of the board's communication as to what their thinking was, why things were decided this way. So I put these findings as a suggestion, but the board really should take ownership of it and make the findings to explain their thinking.
So I think we've discussed the findings in the affirmative. I think we're comfortable there. I think we can take a vote on those. To John's point, if the proposed findings are not voted favorably, then the responsible thing for us to do is to write a new finding that explains why we would have voted otherwise. And that's an important means of documenting the rationale for the decision that we make. All right, so the proposed findings, there will be, number one, there will be a significant net benefit to achieving the town's affordable housing objectives as a result of allowing the construction or rehabilitation of an affordable dwelling unit on a different locus than the development. Specifically, the specific benefit is the addition of an affordable unit to the Hopkinton housing stock. 2, all applicable criteria and standards set forth in Chapter 210 have been satisfied. And then 3, granting the special permit will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of Chapter 210. So on that, I will entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings that were just read aloud.
So moved. Ron Prefer.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Rob, how do you vote?
No.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
No.
And Gary is a no as well. So that motion fails. It does have a majority, but it does not have the 2/3 majority required. All right. So on that note, what we need to do now is we need to write a new finding that explains the rationale for the vote. And I think this gets a little tricky because while a majority of people did vote for it, the 2/3 majority did not. So I think what probably makes sense is for those of us that voted no, I think it makes sense for us to craft this language, and then we'll go ahead and revote on that. And again, this gets a little tricky because I think what matters most is that the revised finding. Yeah, I don't know quite how to describe it. It just gets tricky because it's we still need John, do we still need a finding with a 2/3 vote, even if it's a finding in the negative and in denial?
So, I mean, you don't need findings. The findings just help describe the reason why the board voted a certain way. So, you don't need findings. But if the board wants to clarify their position as to why the previous findings were not approved and what was deficient in the application that did not meet the standards set forth in the bylaw, I think that would be helpful to clarify the board's position.
Okay. So I'll explain my rationale here, and this is going to take a little bit of wordsmithing here. And I think this probably isn't a surprise if people were tracking my comments, but I don't think that the proposed solution offered a significant net benefit over what is allowed by right in the bylaw. And, you know, and at the end of the day, for me, the addition of one affordable unit just doesn't feel significant to me. So while it's in line with the direction of the bylaw, there is still a means in the bylaw to allow this to move forward. It just maybe doesn't make sense in this particular application. Do others have thoughts on it, or do other folks that voted against it want to share their perspective?
I concur. I also don't think that it would be in harmony with the general purposes of the bylaw.
Navdeep?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about the affordable housing within the subdivision, 4,200 square foot, in my mind, is not considered affordable housing. So maybe you can look at the option of having that one house potentially be 3 houses for 3 different families. If everything else being constant, then the town of Hopkinton can get 3 affordable housing, and that's beneficial for the town. But just having one is not a significant benefit.
Yeah.
And this also reduces the cost for the builder itself.
Through the chair, could I? So I agree with all the comments. I think I don't think this is a finding, but setting a precedent that it's just expensive to build an affordable unit on site. Well, we know that. Like, as a board, we moved this bylaw forward. We put it in place to go before town meeting, where it was overwhelmingly approved at town meeting, and we just there has to be a significant net benefit above and beyond what a builder could do on site. And if they can build one affordable unit on site, and they're proposing one affordable unit on off site, like, that's going to be every project forever until this bylaw is changed. So, like, I think the long-term solution is revisiting the bylaw itself. That's my opinion.
All right, so I just took some notes here, and I'm going to attempt to sort of pull this together as I read it. But a revised finding would be that 2/3 of the board did not agree that the addition of one affordable unit would be a significant net benefit to the town, and that financial limitations alone are not reason enough to warrant issuing of a special permit.
I would just add, Gary, when you say build one affordable unit, something to the effect of when they could provide one affordable unit on site, with the main limiting factor is financial viability of building it on site. So they could have gone forward with one affordable unit on site, and they're trying to go off site. Like, I think we need to
All right, so let me try this again. 2/3 of the board did not agree that one affordable unit on a different site was a significant net benefit to the town. Nor did they find that financial limitations of building an affordable unit on site is sufficient to justify a special permit for building a unit off site.
I think you meant to say on site at the last word. Financial limitations of building a unit on site.
Yes, do not warrant a special permit for a unit off site. Because a special permit would be for a unit offsite.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. How do people feel about that finding? I think it's worded in a way that it represents the vote of the board without necessarily representing the opinion of an individual. John, we don't have very many of these. I don't know if you have any suggestions or edits to that.
No, if that's what the board wants to accept, then it's up to you.
Okay. So should we now take a vote on that revised finding?
Yes.
All right. So I will entertain a motion that the board accept the revised finding as read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Rob Benson, second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
No.
Ron?
Yeah.
Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes, so that carries 8-1. Okay, so I guess, John, the last thing for us, we don't need any further discussion or debate on conditions or approvals. Do we need to vote on I mean, we denied the findings, so we don't need to take a formal vote on approval or denial, do we?
So actually, I'm just thinking out loud. Findings don't need a supermajority. The approval needs a supermajority. That being said, I don't know if it matters. You still need to vote. And I think in this situation, you're going to vote to deny or disapprove the special permit using the new findings. Or the board could use the original finding and then move to deny. Though I think that's messy. I think you should use the new findings because it explains why the findings weren't approved.
Okay. So
you do need to vote. You can either vote in the positive to approve, or you can vote in the negative to disapprove.
So if we vote in the negative, that's reasonably straightforward for the people that voted against the findings. If people voted in favor of the original findings, I guess that doesn't matter now because we've voted on new findings. But I guess I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with how to vote and close this out.
I'm not sure what we need. And do we need a majority in either case or what?
You need a supermajority to approve.
So
you need
to
a simple
disapprove, do we
majority
need
to
a majority?
deny. What's that?
Or to deny, we need a majority, or we need I guess if we didn't
If
get
you
the
have a
majority,
majority to deny, you don't have a supermajority to approve.
right? So we would vote twice. If we failed to deny, then we need to get a supermajority to approve.
Through the chair, I apologize. I am completely and utterly confused of what we are
Thank you,
going
Ron.
to try to vote on. To approve, to disapprove, the negative. I'm like, in the simplest terms, can we discuss what this next vote will be
on? This is new territory for
So
all of us.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's confused. Thank you, Jane.
So the most straightforward thing I would expect is to vote to approve with the expectation that we've decided that the findings show that it doesn't meet the requirements.
Vote to approve on the fact that the findings does not warrant a special permit.
It
Is that
would
what you're
be
saying?
hypocritical if, as a board, we then voted to approve with a supermajority based on the findings that we set out. But I think that's the...
Yeah, I agree, Matt. I think that's the cleanest. Because otherwise we're going to ask people to deny it when maybe they personally didn't feel like it was worthy of denying. So I think that's where it's cleaner to vote on the affirmative. So here's what we're going to do. I will entertain a motion that the board approve the special permit with the conditions that were previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Just to be clear, could you read those conditions again that you previously, I'm still not clear on exactly what we're voting on.
Do you really want me to read the conditions again?
Yes.
These are the conditions, not the findings.
Right. The original condition, is that what we're voting on? Not the findings, that's gone.
Now,
So the findings were not approved, or the original findings were not approved.
Right, so we're
So we
voting
vote-
on the condition, the original condition.
So, through the chair, technically,
Yes,
the findings are probably not a supermajority, so the findings could be considered approved. Because it was 5-4, and I apologize, that's my mistake. The findings could be considered approved because it's a simple majority. The approval of the special permit needs a supermajority, not necessarily the findings. So if we want to strike the second findings, the revised findings, and then vote on the approval because the original findings were approved, then it would not pass because the board did not, or a supermajority of the board did not accept the findings and the approval of the special permit. So I apologize. That may have been
Yeah, I think everybody got
confusing to do.
confused at that point.
Okay. So, sorry, folks, and I'll take responsibility for this as well. So in that case, the proposed findings passed, and they passed 5-4. So I'm going to recommend we strike. So I'll entertain a motion that we remove the secondary findings that we previously voted on.
The revised ones, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved. Round three.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Is everyone clear on why we're redoing this? All right.
First time it passed.
So yes. So we're voting on striking or removing the revised finding. So Rob, how do you vote?
yes, on removing the revised findings.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes. Okay. So now we'll vote on approval, and this is the one that does require the 2/3 majority. I will entertain a motion that the board approve the special permit with the conditions that were previously read aloud by the chair.
So point of clarification, if we agree that the findings have been met as written, is what we're voting on here, not that we agree, no. Okay.
You're voting to approve the special permit at this point in time. So the findings were already voted on. 5 members voted for it, 4 members voted against it. So they were approved.
Right.
By simple
And if
majority.
So we agree on the findings, and if we feel like, what would lead us to vote no in this case versus yes? Is as a board we've said that being offsite is now a significant net benefit, right? That's decided by setting that in the findings.
So 5 members of the board said that, and this vote
Got it.
carries that, and we will include the vote in the decision. So 5 members. So anyone reading will see that 5 members voted for that finding. But then when the approval comes, if 6 members don't vote for the approval, then that reflects that the permit is not approved.
Okay, so we voted to agree on the findings, and this is voting that those findings are sufficient for the permit. For the permit.
So now you're voting on the approval. The findings have already been voted. There's a different threshold for the findings and the approval, and that's the confusing part.
Right. I'm still not clear. Now I feel like I think we're wrong.
So I guess one way, and this is making it even messier, but one way to clean it up could be that you vote on the approval, conditions, and findings all in one vote, and you don't do a separate findings and approval vote. And therefore, whoever votes for the approval and the findings will vote in favor, and whoever votes against the approval and the findings will vote against. And therefore, it's not that people are voting against or trying to vote for different findings. It's that they do not agree with the findings and therefore do not agree with the approval.
I'd be a proponent of that solution.
So what we could do is, again, vote to strike the original findings, vote again on a motion to include the findings, conditions, and approval.
That seems like the cleanest to me. Folks agree with that approach? We're gonna have to vote on it, but just looking for nodding heads. Okay, so then I will entertain a motion to strike the previous vote on the proposed findings, the original proposed findings.
So moved. Second.
Any further
Let
discussion?
John figure that out.
Seeing none. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes. Okay, so now we have no voted upon findings. We have no voted upon approval. And now I will entertain a motion that the board, let me make sure I get this right, that the board accept and approve the findings as previously allowed and approve the special permit with the conditions as previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
John, did you get all that?
No. Jane was first. Who was second?
Ron.
Matthew can be second.
Okay. Any further discussion? I want to make sure, apologize about the confusion here, but I think we're all clear now.
Clear as mud.
All right. Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, no.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Elise?
Elise, no.
Matthew?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
No.
Navdeep?
No.
And Gary is a no. So just to be clear, that motion was denied 6 votes to 3.
Through the chair, do we need to put some like we had that alternate finding now that we've already voted?
Yes.
Like we want to set a precedent is what we want to do, in my opinion.
Yes. So this is where it's important, and I say this from prior experience, that we document why the board voted the way we did. And that's where I'd propose that revised finding, that 2/3 of the board or I guess I should say this now, this is with a new vote, the majority of the board did not agree that the addition of one affordable unit to Hopkinton housing stock yielded a significant net benefit, and that financial justification alone was not sufficient to warrant a special permit for an offsite unit in place of building an affordable unit by right within the proposed development. And I think that captures the rationale for why we as a board did not vote in approval of this special permit.
I think it captures in the sentiment. What procedurally, John, what do we need to do?
I'm sorry, do you want to accept findings after you just voted to not approve the special permit?
We want to give a rationale and like have it in some form of like, this is a rationale so that
we
when
can
this
add
comes
that
back
to the
again.
discussion of the decision, but you voted on findings.
That's fine. I just want to make sure, I go way back to the, when the planning board denied the original solar development in Wilson. And that's one of the things we did not do is we didn't properly document the rationale for the vote. So I want to make sure that in this situation, we document the rationale as to why the planning board voted against approval of this.
So I can add that to a discussion, but the board voted on findings in that vote and not the revised findings. So those revised findings were never voted on technically.
Okay. So then let's not call it a finding. Let's call it, I just want to make sure, and maybe I just want to make sure that that is representative of the board members and why they voted against it.
Through the chair, can John just add it to the discussion?
Yes.
Yep. But I have to sign that decision, and I just want to make sure that what's in that discussion is representative of the board.
Right.
I agree with what you said. I don't know if you want to, if there's that requires a vote, or I think there's whatever you want to do.
It doesn't sound like it requires a formal vote. I'll review it with the decision when after John drafts that decision. But I guess just from a context perspective, I want to make sure that if folks on the board feel otherwise or don't feel like it reflects the thoughts of the board, then we can discuss. Okay. On that note, then the last thing to do here is to close this hearing. So I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing for the special permit at 024 Chestnut.
So moved.
So moved. Second, Ron Priestler.
Assuming no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Priestler, yes.
Elise?
Elise, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Navdeep?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. So, all right. Rick, I appreciate your patience. I know that wasn't the outcome you were hoping for, and certainly a tricky one for us to work through. But I do am grateful that you worked with us as well as you did. So thank you. Appreciate your time and input. Whisper Way. So it's getting late. And I see the Nations and I see Joe Markedon patiently waiting, and again, apologize, that took a lot longer, and it's a new territory for us as a board. We've got three things before us related to Whisper Way. I do want to talk about the building permit issue first. And but I guess I don't know if we're going to get through all three of these tonight, just being realistic. And Joe, I see you've turned your camera on. Any particular prioritization from your end?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman, but it may be worth hearing out Mr. Kablack. He may have spent a bit more time with Ron and Chris and Craig on the priorities of the proposal.
All right, I see Mr. Kablack has his hand raised.
Yes. Good evening. Mark Kablack. I represent Ron, excuse me, Ravenwood and Ron Nation, the principal of Ravenwood. There are two administrative matters tonight, if you will, and then the substantive matter is the amendment of the special permit that Joe will speak to. We were before the board in August on the substantive matter. And on the administrative matter, we are anxious, the nations are anxious to proceed with development of this community. I have the deed of the open space to the town in my possession. Ron has executed that. We are advocating that the board accept that deed into escrow until such time as the board decides whether it will amend the special permit relative to the open space layout or not. If the board decides to amend the open space layout, the open space description will change. It will increase by approximately 5 acres. And the deed will change accordingly. If the board does not accept the special permit proposal, then the deed will stand as is. Of course, once the deed is tendered to the town, there's still an administrative process that the town needs to follow. The town meeting needs to vote acceptance. The Board of Selectmen needs to sign the deed, and those things would be mattered as what would be taken care of as a matter of course. That's the administrative matter. If the board agrees to that process, then Ron Nation and the rest of his crew can proceed to pull building permits on the remaining lots in the development.
So, Mark, who are you granting the deed to?
The deed will be granted to the town. The deed proposal is to grant the open space to the town. Your bylaw allows for either that method or the dedication of the open space to a homeowner association coupled with a conservation restriction, but we are taking the first route.
Okay. So the challenge for us is that historically we've had a lot of issues with encroachment and with disturbance of open space prior to conveyance. And the groups that would take responsibility for the open space are not willing to accept it if it has been encroached upon or disturbed. We're in a bit of a bind here because from a process perspective, this should have been wrapped up prior to occupancy certificates. It was not, but the OSPC and HALT have both made it very clear that they will not accept land unless there are appropriate boundary markers, appropriate safeguards in place to ensure no encroachment, and with monitoring in some capacity to ensure that the open space has not been disturbed. So I appreciate you trying to get ahead of it with that paperwork. But it doesn't solve our problem of who's, if the entities that will be responsible for this open space are unwilling to take it without having certain conditions met, then I don't think we as a board are in a position to accept that.
Well, the condition I think we're bound by, and I understand that there has been historically a process followed here that doesn't meet squarely with the condition of the special permit. But the condition of the special permit and your bylaw provides for two means in which to satisfy the condition. We are now proposing to satisfy that condition through one of those express means. And the only subject matter of discussion from my perspective tonight should be whether the town is willing to delay full acceptance until this special permit amendment process is completed or not. If you're not, then we will tender the deed as is, and we will then have met the special permit condition. There may be logistical issues that need to take place before the town believes it can conduct a town meeting vote, or that the selectmen want to go through before they sign the deed. But that is not a prerequisite to meeting the terms of the condition as it reads. This condition dates to originally a special permit issued in 2018 that was amended in 2019.
So as I read, the common open space shall be conveyed prior to the issuance of the first building permit in an open space and landscape preservation development. You agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay. So then I guess what you're proposing is that it's ready to be conveyed. And the question is, are we as a planning board willing to accept that without?
The planning board doesn't accept this deed. The planning board just determines that the condition of the special permit has been met. In this case, the tendering of the deed is the completion of the condition. And the request tonight is whether the board is willing to delay the full acceptance of the deed by the town until such time as we determine whether the special permit will be amended and open space increased by the proposed 5 acres.
So the common open space shall be conveyed prior to the issuance of the first building permit in an open space and landscape preservation development. Has that common open space been conveyed?
No, and admittedly, building permits have been issued here as they have in the past for Ravenwood and others prior to meeting the full terms of this condition. Admittedly, that's the case. We're trying to rectify that with the presentation of this deed currently.
Okay, so, but I guess from my perspective, that obligation has not been met. So I'm not really sure what you're asking us for tonight.
So again, I'm in possession of a signed deed. That obligation in terms of conveying that property can be met tomorrow morning if that's what you're asking us to do. What we're requesting is that the tendering of that deed out of escrow will be delayed until such time as whether the board will amend the special permit or not. If the board amends the special permit, the deed will be amended to include an additional 5 acres. If the board decides not to amend the special permit, the deed will be tendered as it has currently been signed.
I think we're mixing two different pieces to this. Number one is the issue that building permits should not have been issued because the open space was not conveyed. And two, that you're encouraging us to find a way for you to move forward, even though the open space itself may change as we move forward through the hearing process. And I think those are two different things.
They are absolutely two different things, and I'm not here to argue or find reason for the first point, because as I have said now, I think twice, I'll say it again the third time, admittedly, building permits were issued here prior to the full completion of that condition. What I will say, again, on the second point, and I think I've said this 3 times now, we're willing to rectify the failure of that condition tonight by tendering the deed to the town for the open space as it's currently defined. The only request is that the deed be held in escrow until this special permit decision can be decided one way or the other. And the bylaw, in fact, provides for that type of an extension accommodation if the planning board so decides.
So, Mark, I'll say it for my 3rd time. I don't have any assurance that anyone will accept that property in its current form. So even, and the problem is that if nobody accepts it, then it can't be conveyed. So, and I'm not an attorney here, so maybe I'm misunderstanding something here, but all the guidance that I've gotten here is that somebody has to accept that land. And in conversations over the last several days with representatives of both the OSPC and HALT, they are not willing to accept that land at this point in time.
Well, I guess I need further clarification from you about that process, because I know that the town has in fact accepted a deed into escrow and issued building permits in other communities in the town. This deed is not being proposed to be conveyed to HALT. It is being proposed to be conveyed to the town, which is one of the mechanisms that the bylaw provides for. So we do not need to meet any criteria for acceptance by HALT, because that is not what is being proposed here.
Mr. Gelsich.
Yes.
Are you able to help me out here?
Sure. The open space that I believe Mr. Kabelak is referencing is for Chamberlain Whalen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Chamberlain Whalen was
that's one example, John.
Okay, well, Chamberlain Whalen was not an open space and landscape preservation development. So that was not bound by the bylaw. And I believe you keep referencing the condition, and it may be a condition, but I'm referencing the bylaw itself. When it says, and I believe Gary is too, when it says that the open space cannot be conveyed, or no building permits can be issued until the building permit. Let me start over. No building permits can be issued until the open space is conveyed. And to Gary's point, with the recipient of the open space, the bylaw also says that an extension of time to convey any portion of the common open space can be granted, but only if the entity or agency to whom the open space will be conveyed concurs with the request. So I think the issue here is Open Space Preservation Committee has said that they are not going to be the recipient of that open space if there are encroachments on it. And I think we need to identify if there are encroachments on it before we can say that open space will accept the land. And you need to identify that before you can extend the time to convey the land. The planning board needs to identify that before they can extend the time. And the escrow agreement needs to be signed by the select board in order to be effective. So I think there's a couple steps that need to happen in the meantime to get that extension and to put the land in escrow that can't be solved by tomorrow.
Well, a couple of things. The Chamberlain Whalen Road example is not the only example that I'm referring to. The concept that the condition can only be met, that building permits will not be released on any open space special permit approved subdivision until town meeting has accepted an open space deed. I guarantee you I can come up with numerous examples of how the town has not proceeded in that fashion.
I don't think anyone suggested that it needs to wait until town meeting.
Well, you seem to be implying that there is a process, whether it's through HALT or the Open Space Committee or someone else, including potentially a town meeting vote, before full conveyance can be accomplished. it seems to me that you're either asking that we're all in, that the town requires an all-in effort on this condition, or something short of that. And what I'm suggesting is that something short of that is a good faith tendering of a quitclaim deed, conveying the property to the town that would meet the condition of that special permit.
Through the chair, Vandross.
Go ahead, John.
So I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you on that. I think the process to get to that point is a little bit more complicated than you're setting forth. It's not necessarily the conveyance at town meeting. I think we can agree that a deed in escrow can work as a conveyance. The problem the board is facing is to get to that point, Open Space Preservation Committee needs to agree to accept the land and to agree to the extension of time to convey the land. Because as of right now, we're already past that extension of time process. You need to do that for what has already happened, right? Because building permits have already been issued. So it's already past the conveyance time. So the Open Space Preservation Committee needs to agree for the board to vote to extend that time.
So John,
and that has not happened yet. And so once that happens, the board can vote to extend the conveyance time to allow for the select board to sign the deed in escrow. But none of that has happened. So we can't agree to extend the time without open space weighing in on it. And then we can't accept it even by escrow until select board signs the agreement. So those are the two issues that I'm seeing.
Where is that process laid out so that we can make sure that we follow it?
Which process, the open space or the select board?
The one you just described.
So
as
in
the
section
process that is required for us to meet the condition of this special permit.
So it's not the condition of the special permit, it's in the bylaw. It may be a condition, but it's actually in the bylaw.
The process that you just described is in the bylaw?
To extend the time to convey is in the bylaw.
I understand that's in the bylaw. I'm asking the process that you just described and that the chair just described, by which we would need to go through steps of monumentation and application to the Open Space Committee, getting some type of decision by the Open Space Committee and bringing it back to this board. Where is that process outlined?
So when the bylaw says that the agency or entity accepting the land needs to agree to the extension of time, that is wholly within the Open Space Committee's jurisdiction to say what they are requiring in order to accept the open space. And I believe that any entity that's accepting open space is going to want to have that open space boundary marked so they can check and see if there's any encroachments, any damage to the open space. And I don't think I think that's to Gary's point, even if HALT were to get the CR and you were to keep it with the HOA, they would also want those types of assurances on where the open space is. And so that's not a planning board process. That is, you need to get the okay from the entity accepting the open space to extend the period of time. Right now, since building permits have already been issued, there's a need to extend the period of time because the open space has not been conveyed if you want to get more building permits. So in order to satisfy that extension of time, you need to get the okay from open space. For the
John, I understand what you're saying. I'm asking you that process, where is that process outlined in either your bylaw or in the planning board rules and regulations? Because we want to make sure
the bylaw states, but only if the entity or agency to whom the open space will be conveyed concurs with the request. So you need to get open space's agreement that they will allow for the extension of time.
Where in the town's charter or where in the bylaw does it indicate that the town of Hopkinton can only accept open space through a decision of acceptance by the Open Space Committee?
We're not arguing that the town has to accept the open space from the Open Space Committee. You're asking for an extension of time to convey the open space. And the bylaw specifically states the entity or agency accepting the open space needs to concur with the request.
Okay, so
hang on, stop, everybody. So
needs to
make Mark, hang on.
Finding
Mark
is the open
Mark,
space.
hang on. We're not going to have back and forth discussion here. This needs to be led through the chair. So that doesn't feel like this is going anywhere. I just want to remind everyone that we're also well past our meeting time. And if we're going to continue and go back and forth like this, then we could just adjourn. We can continue this and we can adjourn at the next, we can adjourn and continue this at the next meeting. So we're already 40 minutes over our allotted meeting time. We're all tired, it's late. And the banter back and forth isn't going to get us any closer to a resolution here.
Well, I'd respectfully ask again, because we want to strictly comply with the bylaw, with the condition of the with your rules and regulations, where this process is outlined. And so, I'm sorry, John, you have not told me, John, because of your reiteration of the bylaw, that this process of going before the Open Space Committee is what we need to do.
John, can you just reference what you were reading right there?
Yeah, let me find it in the bylaw.
You don't need to read the bylaw because the bylaw is not answering my question.
Through the chair, can I clarify my position?
Sure.
Okay, so the bylaw states that no building permit shall be issued until the open space is conveyed. Building permits have been issued. Therefore, in order to get additional building permits, the planning board needs to vote to extend the period of time to convey the land so that you can be issued additional building permits. The bylaw then states, in order to extend that period of time, the entity accepting the land needs to concur with that extension. The Open Space Committee has been identified as the entity accepting the land for the town. They have not concurred with the extension.
Where is that identified?
The board makes that decision
right there, because
the
we are
board
talking
identifies
around and
who's
across one
accepting
another.
the land.
Where does it say that the town of Hopkinton can only accept open space by and through the Open Space Committee?
That is not what I'm saying.
You just did say that.
No, I'm saying the board has identified the Open Space Committee as the entity to receive the open space.
What board?
The planning board.
The planning board doesn't have that right either under your bylaw or under the special permit. Your condition as originally issued in 2018 and as amended in 2019 does not set forth that process.
I don't know what else to tell you aside from building permits were issued, building permits were issued prior to the conveyance of open space. To get additional building permits, the bylaw states the time has to be extended by the planning board with the concurrence of the entity or agency accepting the land. Who is the entity or agency accepting the land?
The town of Hopkinton.
So who at the town of Hopkinton concurs with the request? Who from the town of Hopkinton has concurred with the request to extend the time?
That authority rests with the Board of Selectmen by vote of the town meeting.
So has the Board of Selectmen extended the period of time to convey the land?
No. And that is why all open space deeds are tendered into escrow until those two events are met. And that is the process by which any open space deed is conveyed to the town of Hopkinton.
So,
sorry.
We're not going to solve this tonight. And I'm sorry, Mark, if that was your expectation. But we're clearly dug in two different positions here. And the back and forth isn't going to solve it. So I think there's two pathways here. Pathway number one is, per our request, if there is an agreement to extend the request from open space or another entity for that matter, whoever that is, then that's our preference and that's how we'd like to move forward. If that doesn't work for you, then you're gonna need to convince us of the alternate pathway forward.
Well,
but we're not going to solve it tonight.
I'm still confused as to what you're asking us to do. Are you asking us to make an application in some form to the Open Space Committee? And what is that application for?
We're asking you, we're asking for time for open space to review and agree to accept this land and to identify what requirements they have in order to accept it at some point in the future. Which, by the way, is how most recently that's how we. That's Open Space and HALT have been very clear that they will not accept any land in which they haven't had certain requirements met.
Okay, and is that application to them made irrespective of the current request to modify that open space? In other words, the substantive part of the hearing discussion tonight?
Well, I think that if the open space parcel is going to change, then I think that would weigh in on whoever the receiving entity is. That could weigh in on their acceptance and recommendation.
Because we have a timing issue here that we're most pressed for time to get building permits. So in the first instance, what we want is someone to nod that the condition of the special permit has been met. And the simplest way for us to do that, we thought, was to tender a deed. If
Which
that
it has
also
not been
now
met.
includes an
It has not been
application to
met.
the Open Space Committee, we'll do that. I'm just not sure what that process involves. That's so a lot of frustration on our end about that, and I apologize if frustration is coming off in a off-putting way.
So again, what we're asking for is Open Space to agree to accept this land and identify any requirements that they have prior to acceptance. And if they agree to that and they're willing to extend the timing that enables you to move forward, then we as a planning board would likely be comfortable with that as a pathway forward.
Okay, I understand your position, and I've taken up Joe's time.
So, and again, I realize that part of the challenge here is that it's late. We're all tired. It's been a challenging meeting for us, and that doesn't excuse anything, but I'm just trying to be very pragmatic here in how can we get this moving forward in a way that all parties are comfortable with it. And what I think makes sense is to get this in front of Open Space with the proposed changes and have them weigh in on that. And that will come into consideration with the planning board as we review it, and that will make it very clean for us to extend that time frame, knowing that Open Space has their requirements met in order to receive that land. I think if you have another alternative, I just that I'm open to it. Your original proposal is not something that I'm comfortable with.
Well, the other alternative is to continue to have the discussion, whether tonight or at your next hearing, on the substantive proposal, so that we can get the planning board's input on that at the same time, at least concurrently with the process before the Open Space Committee.
So, I'm going to open it up to the board here to get input from my peers. do we want to call it, what's reasonable here? 20 minutes to go through the proposed changes in front of us? And I will say, we're not going to reach a decision on it, but we can get through the initial discussion and preliminary feedback. I'm willing to do that, but I'm looking to the board members. It's too bad we just wasted the last 30 minutes with what we did, but.
I think it's Gary through the chair. It's starting new topics here at 10 of 11 is really hard.
Yeah, I agree with Rob.
Oh, Gary, can we take a vote on this if you're okay with that?
I mean, I don't really need to take a formal vote, but if I'm hearing everybody saying we're already 50 minutes past and we're not comfortable starting, then I'm comfortable with that as well.
Yeah, it's too late.
Through the chair, maybe we could put it on for another meeting, and in the meantime, maybe they could get together with John Gelchik and get further clarification, behind the scenes.
It sounds like the main thing we want was from the open spaces to weigh in on it. I don't know how much more John.
Yeah, we need open space to weigh in on it. All right. So I know this is not ideal. But I am, gosh, I guess we haven't even opened the public hearing yet. So then I guess what we would need to do is we would need to open the public hearing, vote to continue it, and then we reconvene in our next meeting.
Was the hearing not opened at your last meeting?
This was a new public hearing.
It was, I'm pretty sure you opened the hearing on your meeting on the 28th.
There was something about Zero Whisper Way on the last meeting.
We did talk about Whisper Way.
On the 21st, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We were before the board on the 21st. You were not present that night, but I believe the hearing was opened on that night. This was the continuation of that hearing.
John, can you confirm? I remember the Whisper Way, just in the video of the Whisper Way conversation. I don't recall.
That's correct. They opened it on the 21st.
Okay. I apologize then. I'm just reading the agenda here. All right. Then considering that, then our next meeting would be October 2nd. So I'm going to recommend that we continue this to October 2nd, and we will put you first of the hearings for that evening.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to October 2nd.
So moved.
Rob, second.
Any further discussion? Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Jane, yes.
Ron? Who's Ron? Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
I think we lost Vic. No, we have Vic.
Yes.
And we lost Navdeep, and Gary is a yes as well. So again, I apologize that it took this long to get here, but we will make sure that this is at the top of our agenda on October 2nd.
Thank you.
All right. Last for us, we do have meeting minutes. This should be a quick one. Any comments or edits to the minutes from August 21st, 2023? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from August 21st, 2023.
So moved.
Rob, second.
And if there's no further discussion, Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Jane, yes.
Elise?
Elise, yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Sorry, guys. Point of order. Can I vote on them if I wasn't there?
Yes, you can. Did you review the video?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Yep. Vic?
Yes.
And Gary is a yes as well. Lastly, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Rob, second.
So we no further discussion. Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
Gary is a yes as well. So tough one tonight. Thank you all for your patience. I learned something new every day, and I learned something tonight. So, but appreciate everyone working through this, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Bye.
Cheers.